Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1553 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news coming out of Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia, and also a little bit out of Iran too. What we're seeing right now, we're tracking a massive attack on Russia's Sevastopol port, and right now it looks like it's a very large attack, and the air defense inside of Crimea is currently struggling, and that's putting it mildly. We're also seeing that Putin's preparing a Belarus false flag provocation, and it sounds like Belarus is already laying the groundwork for some type of operation against Ukraine, and also, Iran is now vowing to attack U.S. forces in retaliation for the recent U.S. airstrikes on their coast. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world. As many of y'all will know, that the past 24 hours was covered yesterday on an emergency breaking news stream on Monday. We do have significant news that has been coming from around the entirety of the world, and in particular, we are currently observing and covering the breaking news story currently unfolding around the port of Sevastopol, as Ukrainian long-range drone forces are currently conducting a significant attack on the ports of Sevastopol, Novorossiysk, and Tuapse simultaneously, with video and picture evidence confirming the attacks on all three major ports, these three being the 3 out of the 4 largest ports and most significant ports for the Russian Navy and economy within the Black Sea. We've also been able to hear additionally that the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian government have issued an open threat to Belarus today after the Belarusian government announced publicly that they had recorded 166 Ukrainian drone incursions over the past week into Belarusian territory, and they were now going to be divulging this information to Russia for future consideration. This information appears to be a clear fabrication, as no actual evidence has been submitted of any type of video or picture evidence showing that there have been Ukrainian drones over Belarusian airspace. The Ukrainians have fervently denied this statement by the Belarusian government and armed forces, and have countered that if the Belarusians enter the war, the Ukrainians already have 500 targets within the Republic of Belarus that are lined up and ready to be struck with long-range drone attacks at the very minute that the Belarusians enter the conflict. Additionally, we've also been able to hear that the Russians are continuing on with their threats about the leveling of the city of Kyiv, with some, including advisors to the office of the President Vladimir Putin, stating that there may be some European heads that will be rolling inside of Kyiv if they do not end up leaving the capital, as many European Union missions and delegations have decided to remain in Kyiv amongst the Russian threats that have been levied over the past several days. We've also been able to hear some further details as well about what the Ukrainians believe will be struck, and we've also been able to hear that the Russian government has already announced that, interestingly enough, the office of the President of Ukraine and the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada are not going to be attacked and destroyed in the upcoming attack, because according to them, the decision-making centers of Ukraine aren't actually the decision-making centers of Ukraine, and therefore are not going to be hit. In the meantime, we've also seen the Ukrainian attacks have still continued to rain fire onto the M14 highway in the rear line area of Zaporizhzhia, and as of today, we've already started to see that this is having an effect on the frontline situation around the battlefield of Kharkiv, as Russian Federation forces have retreated nearly 2 square kilometers within the area just to the southeast of the Kharkiv front, apparently due to a lack of ammunition and apparently attempting to withdraw to be able to get some more breathing room between them and the Ukrainian forces that they're currently facing. This is already showing that some battalion combat teams, or battalion tactical groups, as the Russian Federation will call them, are beginning to run dangerously low on ammo already, at least some of them, and we're already beginning to see that some tactical retreats are being done at the battalion level to be able to try and conserve ammunition and also give their units a little bit more breathing room, possibly leading to the jeopardization of the ongoing Russian offensive towards the Ukrainian city of Tuapse, which has been ongoing for a year and a half. We've also been able to hear outside of the situation directly within the Ukraine war that the Ukrainians are currently meeting with the E3, which is Germany, France, and Britain, on the situation of the Russian threats against the city of Kyiv, and it also appears that the Russian Federation is continuing a significant amount of jamming within the area of the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea, attempting to create a GPS jamming net around the Baltic nations themselves and to cause a significant strategic threat as a result. We've also been able to hear that apparently the United States is working on cutting down its force size within NATO under U.S. Army Europe and Africa, and also under the United States Air Force and its command within the European theater of responsibility, or area of responsibility, as we are understanding that the United States is still working to demine and undermine our interest in Europe and its strategic outlook in the future. Additionally, we've also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has stated that they reserve the right to respond to the U.S. attacks that were conducted just yesterday. And we've also finally been able to hear as to why these attacks were conducted, and you'll would not believe it, but even according to U.S. accounts, there was actually no defensive strike involved in yesterday's actions. It was largely a preemptive attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran, because apparently we gathered information that showed that the Iranians might be getting up to something that might not be good, but they hadn't even put it into action yet at the time we conducted the strikes.
That's kind of interesting too, is my intuition yesterday was telling me that it did not look defensive to me. So I would tend to believe that report right there, because the evidence was not stacking up to be defensive. Not that I'm opposed to it, by the way, because I am actually in favor of strikes on Iran to get this over with at this point. But defensive, that was a little bit questionable.
It did appear to be questionable, and we did get proof of that today. It does largely appear that that statement yesterday was entirely questionable and has now been questioned. The Iranians also conducted an attack against a merchant vessel today, which appears to be their response in earnest, at least to the point right now, showing once again that the Iranians are conducting armed attacks against innocent merchant vessels within the area. In the meantime, Israel is trying its damnedest to try and get the conflict going again, as they're now declaring a mobilization across the entirety of the state of Israel, and Netanyahu has also announced that they will be conducting even larger ground actions inside of Lebanon against Hezbollah forces, a violation of the current ceasefire, and also a possible deal breaker for the Islamic Republic of Iran that may force them into preemptive attacks against the United States and our Gulf allies, as well as Israel, to be able to try and defend the remnants of Hezbollah that are left inside of Lebanon at this point. The Israelis also announced the death of a Hamas commander within the Gaza Strip today as well, and significant airstrikes have landed within the Baalbek Valley. We've also been hearing of other major news around the world, including a small amount of news out of North Korea and also out of the United States, but We are going to be covering each and every single piece of this news, starting with our largest stories first and then working our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And before we even get on into our largest story at the moment, we actually have developments on an ongoing story that we'll be covering on air tonight right now. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we are tracking right now that less than an hour ago, we did hear rocket alert sirens going off in northern Israel. It does look like most likely Hezbollah forces inside of Lebanon have launched a renewed rocket attack on the northern part of Israel. And it looks like it's the area of Kiryat Shimona that's currently under attack, it looks like. There's also some other various areas around that same general vicinity that are also under attack. So we're watching that right now. It appears to have been largely limited, but over the past 24 hours, we've seen at least 2 or 3 foreign hostile drone incursions into Israel, and now we're seeing a rocket attack as well inside of their territory. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Of course, there is a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, and also Iran's made a very distinct point to say that if all of a sudden that fighting starts again, then the talks will be called off. So we'll have to see where that goes, but we are monitoring that right now at the hour.
And it certainly does appear that we're seeing that continued hostilities between Hezbollah and the state of Israel are still ongoing in full swing at this point. In the midst of the ongoing ceasefire, we have heard that there have been major ground battles over the course of this day in southern Lebanon, and we have a significant amount of video and picture evidence to show major hostilities being conducted by both sides throughout the battlefields of southern Lebanon. But with that, we are going to be getting into our largest stories of the day, which, of course, pertain to another Ukrainian long-range drone attack that has been conducted against the Russian Federation. Today is, like many other days, has been one of the larger ones that we've seen of the war. And just to show you all some of the attack axes that we've seen at the moment, there have been attack paths, at least recorded and vectored by the Russians, to be traveling through the Tula, Oriel, and Kursk Oblast, the Belgorod, Voronezh, and Lipetsk Oblasts, heading into the deeper heartland of the Russian Federation and near to the Volga River Basin. We've also been able to see that attacks have been conducted directly on the Volgograd Oblast, most likely heading towards the city of Volgograd or the general surrounding area between Volgograd and Ottobinsk. We've also seen other large attacks sweeping their way through the cities of Donetsk and Rostov-on-Don, and then making their way in a southeasterly direction towards the cities of Krasnodar and Stavropol Oblast, with some of these drones most likely making their way all the way to the Dagestan Oblast, which is within the area of the coastline of the Caspian Sea. And we might see that the city of Boom Shakalaka or the city of Kuspisk may be hit again at some point in the future. We've also been able to see that major attacks, which are some of the largest ones that we've seen so far, have been conducted against the Crimean Peninsula, including the major port city of Sevastopol, and currently attacks are ongoing at this moment at the port of Novorossiysk and the port of Tuapse, meaning that right now, out of the 4 major ports, economically and militarily within the Black Sea, Sevastopol, Taman, Novorossiysk, and Tuapse, Sevastopol, Tuapse, and Novorossiysk are the 3 out of the 4 that are currently under attack. And we have just gotten news at this moment right now that the city of Taganrog has taken a direct hit while we've been live on air. And so, Matthew, do we have any further information on that at this moment?
So we are getting our first images out of Taganrog. So apparently the Ukrainian attack is still ongoing from the looks of it. And of course, Taganrog's in an entirely different area than we're seeing in Crimea. So it looks like the other drones reaching near the Russian mainland are also reaching their targets as we speak. We see a pretty large explosion. It looks like a direct hit on the ground. It does not look like an air interception from the looks of it. So Taganrog is under an active drone threat right now. We can see that from these images here. So a pretty wide-ranging attack once again. But the focus of the attack, though, is definitely in Sevastopol. That place has been ripped up badly over the last couple of hours, but Taganrog's also getting some too.
It certainly does appear, while I almost just choked on my spit right there, that Taganrog, damn, I'm having a hard time with that. That Taganrog is under attack at the moment. We do understand that this is within the attack vectors that we were just covering a moment ago on our broader map of the attacks that the Russian Federation had largely started to identify or incoming, and it is on the way to Rostov-on-Don. This is the very northeastern periphery of the Sea of Azov, which is a pretty significant ways away from the Crimean Peninsula, roughly around 225 miles to the northeast. This means that the Ukrainian armed forces may be attempting to attack and destroy significant industrial sites and military facilities within Taganrog, as Taganrog has served as a midway supply hub and also a significant industrial base for the Russian war industry, as there is a repair and aviation facility within the area called VPP Taganrog, which has been operational for decades, and we have seen the Ukrainian armed forces attack and hit, causing significant damage in prior attacks that that we've seen throughout the war, generally over the past year and a half at large. We have also been able to see, outside of these attacks on Taganrog, that currently a significant amount of reports of explosions and attacks around the Sevastopol area have been coming out, with the following information being reported. In Sevastopol, the military is repelling an attack by the Ukrainian armed forces, and 7 drones have been shot down, reported the region's governor, aka the drones made it to their targets and blew up on top of them, but the Russians don't want to admit that, so they're going to say they shot them down and the falling debris is what caused the damage. We have also been able to see what the Russians showed as some of the attack vectors, which appear to have been using the western peripheries of the Crimean Peninsula to be able to bring their attacks on home and into the port of Sevastopol. We did get a brief amount of footage from the area of Sevastopol port showing the searchlights in the area and a little bit of the attack. So here's the clip. You see the searchlight looking around in the sky here.
That looks real effective.
It's very effective. It's World War II levels of effective, which is basically ineffective in the modern day.
Did they order like a blackout or something? Like there's no lights on pretty much anywhere except for the spotlight. Oh, there's a little fire.
Well, you know what's interesting? I think this camera is generally like sideways, and we're like, if y'all tilt your head to the right at a 90-degree angle, you're going to be looking at this finally in a level like footing. Because right now, for some reason, we're looking at it sideways. I don't know why. Because there are some of the lights of the city right there. You can kind of see them; they're very faint, but we can see the air defense fire finally starting to fire over the city as the drones are starting to come in. And apparently, the Russians are either hearing them at this point, or they were able to spot them with the spotlight, which is highly unlikely. Because we don't see the spotlight sitting in one spot. It's waving around frantically like someone's having a heart attack down there trying to find any drone in the air right now.
So this is a rather calm scenario. Like usually you hear a lot more fire. Like the last time there was an attack on Sevastopol, they were firing around. I mean, they were firing at their own city. I think like several things might have landed in Sevastopol itself, like the city. So, you know, it's a lot calmer this time, but still a pretty big attack.
Yeah, it is a lot calmer this time. I think it's because it was filmed a good bit away. We think this was filmed from Kacha or some other sort of a coastal town looking towards Sevastopol, so you don't really get to hear a lot of the chaos that unfolded in the port. And unfortunately, folks, for some reason or another, we haven't gotten any direct footage in the city of Sevastopol yet. That is the only footage that we have at the moment that can confirm that attacks are ongoing and Russian air defense has been activated during the attack. But we do understand that the Ukrainians are attempting to hit Sevastopol for a great many reasons. There is a lot of military infrastructure for the Russian army, the Russian Air Force, the Russian naval infantry, and the Russian Navy that still exists and operates within the area of the port of Sevastopol inside of the Crimean Peninsula. We do understand that the naval wharf in this area is, of course, the largest and most equipped for the Russian Navy and has been used primarily by the Russian Navy up until about 2023, when most of the service vessels that were sitting in this port have been blown up at their moorings, and then they decided to move most of the other combatant ships over to Novorossiysk, leaving only the support vessels inside of Sevastopol, believing that their importance would not be serious enough for the Ukrainians to attempt to attack them, and therefore they'd generally be safe. These facilities have still been attacked even still since 2023, and those facilities may be getting attacked at this moment. There are also oil storage facilities in other periphery areas of the port of Sevastopol, including these right here, which have been hit in prior years, and may be attempting to be attacked again. We also know that there are some Russian coastal defense batteries also based around this area right here as well, which could be used by the Russian Federation in the defense of the city, which may also be targeted, and there's also some important defensive facilities and other locations around here on the southern end near to Misfoilin, which also could be attacked by the armed forces of Ukraine. In the northern part of the city, the Belbek airfield has been a pretty popular crowd pleaser kind of a attacker, or more so an attacked target throughout the course of the conflict, as a significant amount of Russian aviation is rotated in and out of this airbase, although that's started to become a lot more intermittent now that it's well within Ukrainian drone attack range. And there's also a humongous amount of Russian air defenses that are permanently based here at this airfield, and it appears that in prior prior times when the Ukrainians have been able to hit any form of air search radars or air defense systems, the Russians have actually taken the time and the effort to replace the damaged or destroyed systems with new, fresh, and operational ones, meaning that the Ukrainians are always able to find an expensive and largely irreplaceable air defense system operating around the Belbek Air Base, although its significance and strategic pertinence is definitely not as close as it was in the very beginning of the war. At the moment, we have been able to hear that largely all of those targets are under attack at this moment within Sevastopol, and there's been specific eyewitness reports stating that several loud explosions have been recorded in the area of Cape Foylan in the southwestern area of Crimea, or specifically the southern area of the city of Sevastopol. We're not exactly sure what is being hit or targeted within this area, but we generally would assume that given its location and also the fact that this area appears to be sparsely, and I mean very sparsely built up, at least within this little peninsula right here, it is pretty likely there may be some Russian air defenses that are based in this open field, possibly even a Pantsir or a larger system like a Tor M1 and M2, or even an S300 that may be operational on this very peninsula. We're not entirely sure yet, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more picture and video evidence to be able to confirm what exactly has exploded within the area of Cape Foylan, but at the moment we're just not entirely sure what has been targeted or hit within Sevastopol, at least in that area. We can confirm, however, that some explosions did come from the Belbek airfield. We're not sure to the extent of damage that has been caused in that area yet, but once again, it's highly likely an air defense system that has been targeted. Considering that Russian combat aviation is hardly operated out of this airbase any longer, and it generally serves as an air defense hub, it is highly likely that the Ukrainians are conducting further suppression of enemy air defense operations with their long-range drones, targeting and destroying the radar systems that operate the air defenses around this airfield. These sorts of attacks allow for the airspace to be opened up a little bit more than it already is, and allows for Ukrainian drones to make it much closer to the port of Sevastopol and the critical facilities that are found throughout the entirety of the city area to be able to conduct more effective attacks in the future. Not that Russian radar-based air defense has ever proven to be effective against Ukrainian drones so far, it's very rarely ever proven to be effective, but in the very few times that it is effective, that is what they're trying to eliminate from the equation for future attacks that will be conducted against Sevastopol port. Meanwhile, outside of Sevastopol, we've also been able to confirm that more attacks have been conducted against the port of Tuapse and Novorossiysk, which are both not military ports. Well, Novorossiysk actually is kind of dual purpose, but they're more important as oil loading facilities and oil loading ports of the Russian Federation. And both of these have come under attack again tonight and appear to have suffered some pretty decent damage, at least from the little bit that we can tell so far. One clip did come out of Novorossiysk, apparently filmed by some Chinese sailors, showing a star shell that had been fired near to the Vostochny Raion, and also the air defense fire that was coming from around the Vostochny Raion as Ukrainian drones were still incoming and attempting to attack the port.
Oh.
There's a air defense missile firing. That's probably an S-300 or an S-400. And then it goes into the cloud cover and disappears.
Look over there in the distance. There's like some gunfire or something going off over there in the distance too, like some small arms fire, or I guess maybe Gush gun, AA gunfire or something, while the other missiles being shot off.
Yeah, that's actually pretty observant of you. That area is actually the further southern end of the eastern side of the coast, because where we're watching this clip from, these Chinese sailors are somewhere within this port facility right here, just south of the small shunting yard or rail yard that we can see right here, and they're filming it from a vantage point. So right now, what they're looking at are these cranes, which you can see right here. Let me see if I can show you all some of this. So there are the cranes that are on that pier, which is a very significant geolocator for us, because you can see all of those cranes on their track right here on this pier that juts out pretty far into the harbor. So that is a very clear sight line for us to be able to geolocate this. And further on down where that S-300 was fired, it appeared to have been fired somewhere around right here, inside of the Vostochny Raion, right next to some of the barracks and command buildings of the Vostochny. The further on down the coastline, where you're seeing those tracer rounds being fired, those are actually coming from just south of the oil loading port, or are coming generally just from the coastline between here and the town of Kabardinka, which is right down here at this little inlet on the southern end of the bay. So that's actually where all of those air defense guns are firing at, just to show you all here once again what Matthew's pointing out. That's where all of those air defense tracers are coming from.
I guess the Russians plan on using the citizens as a backstop when those eventually reach the ground.
Man, honestly, like, I think they are. And also, here's the question, folks. Y'all want to put bets. How effective was that S-300 air defense missile in stopping a drone attack? Put your bets up. Do you, like, and it's a yes or no answer. Yes, if you think that the missile actually did intercept a drone. No, if the missile did not intercept a drone and it just missed. So let us know.
No. It didn't intercept nothing, man. I mean, that's like that's one of the easiest bets you could ever place in your life. Will the Russian air defense system work or not? I would say most times it probably does not work. I mean, if you bet for the success of the thing, I mean, I think it's a lost cause.
Well, it's not guaranteed. I mean, like, it could intercept something. I don't want to kill anyone's faith off the bat, folks. I mean, maybe Russian propaganda is right. Maybe this thing is actually infallible and it just hit a drone and blew it up in the cloud cover and we just didn't see it, maybe. I don't know. But let's find out. Let's watch this clip a little longer and find out if it actually did intercept a drone or if it didn't. The star shell is still burning up there just at the very edge of the cloud cover, illuminating the Vostochny Rayon. And it didn't intercept the drone. There's the explosion of the drone right on the air defense system.
Jeez, man. Another failure, by the way. Also, just out of curiosity, how much do those interceptors cost that the Russians keep firing off like this? Because, I mean, it's basically like a complete waste of money. It's like flushing like the worthless rubles down the drain.
Well, generally, from what we know, oh my God, I had to go Google this, folks, really quick because I had to try and get a rough answer because I'm not exactly sure. I've heard some numbers between 800,000 to 1.2 million. And that actually is a general ballpark. Usually right now they're sitting around the ballpark price of 1.2 million per missile. So they just chucked a whole Russian main battle tank at that drone in cost. It missed. And then the air defense system that fired it got blown up anyways by the drone.
Big boo-hoo for them. Money down the drain and also a loss. That's a bad day.
Man, not a good day for Russia whatsoever. Actually, I'm sorry, folks. This might be a Vietnamese crew because it actually sounds like Vietnamese. Earlier, when I was covering this in the Short War video, for some reason, I think I mistook this for Mandarin or Cantonese, and this actually sounds more like Vietnamese. So these might be Vietnamese sailors. Well, you see the star shell still fizzling out up there after the drone hit. And oddly enough, the air defense is going quiet now. I wonder why.
Man, Putin's going to call down here and ask him, did they fire? Yes, they fired, but it missed. No, I meant that you fired the bastards that fired the weapon. It's like, fire those bastards, Bliat.
Honestly, man. Also, I saw someone say the S-400 is a Russian knockoff of the Patriot. Well, a lot of people would think that because usually the West is the one who comes up with a weapon system first. But I have to tell y'all something that makes this more embarrassing for Russia. Russia is the one who made these air defense systems first. We made the Patriot to catch up. Let me explain why that's the case, because that sounds a little bit weird, but when you know the history behind it, you'll know why that is the case. Back in the day, in the 1960s, the United States Air Force was already beating the Soviet Air Force in spades in terms of aircraft quality and the amount of aircraft that we were able to field. And by the time of the 1970s, it was a complete lost cause for the Soviet Air Force. The Soviet Air Force was never going to be able to get the training hours that U.S. Air Force pilots got, and their aircraft were falling well behind, because at that point, we were beginning to enter the missile age, which largely revolved around advanced radar and computational systems to be able to fire off radar-guided missiles at a long range, and Soviet aircraft were just not keeping up. And so the Soviet Union was trying to come up with a way to be able to match and defeat the U.S. Air Force, but not with their Air Force. So what they came up with is the large caliber surface-to-air missile systems, which brought about the S-300. The S-300 was the first iteration of large battery, long-range surface-to-air missile defense systems that was supposed to be able to defeat the United States Air Force or contest the airspace without the Soviet Air Force being needed to be able to be on a one-on-one strength level with the United States Air Force. And the Soviets lauded these things as the most advanced and most capable air defense systems in the world. They'd be able to blow a pigeon out of the sky if need be to be able to try and stop the United States Air Force from just curb stomping the Soviet army on the ground at any given point. And so the United States said, damn, this thing is kind of good. And honestly, the Soviets might have a point with this thing, because back then we didn't know how good they were. Now we know they suck. But back then we thought they were pretty good. So we started to race to try and replace our Hawk air defense system, which was generally our most advanced one at the time, which wasn't even close to the S-300. And that's why we developed the Patriot as a counter to the S-300, thinking that it was that good. Turns out the S-300s and the S-400s suck. They can't pick up anything on radar. They can't even hardly pick up an actual aircraft on radar. So it turns out we made the Patriot for really no reason. The U.S. Air Force would have curb stomped the Soviet Union in a hypothetical war, and it looks like we're watching that in real time again. Also, by the way, just to point this out, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has not put out footage yet from their attack drones and the camera footage that they were getting, so we'll probably be seeing that tomorrow, highly likely. So if Matthew makes a short video, you'll probably see it first there. And it's highly likely that this drone either just hit a ship in the Vostochny Rayon, or it just hit the air defense launcher itself, because this explosion quite literally came from this very northern area of the Vostochny. So either it hit the S-400, which did fire from this area, or it hit one of the ships at mooring here in the Vostochny Rayon.
Probably so. Also, by the way, real quick, we are getting some more video of these attacks that are ongoing on Russia right now. The air raid sirens are going crazy right now inside of Voronezh, inside of mainland Russia. It looks like there is a confirmed impact there as well. We just got some video out of Voronezh, and it looks like, I can't tell where it hit, but it hit some building out in the distance. I just can't tell what that is. Sadly, the video is from a very odd angle, so I really can't tell, but let's hear the video and hear what's happening. It's a pretty short one.
Also, it's probably not going to show this well because it's only 4 seconds long. That little smoke plume right there is the hit at the very first second of the video. So here's the clip. Definitely a fire that's broken out from this impact. And if we were to try and do a little bit of geolocation here, there's a building off to the side of him, which appears to be a Brezhnevka. And if we go to Voronezh, keeping in mind that that's a Brezhnevka that this guy is in because it's taller than 4 to 6 stories, which all Khrushchevkas were built at that height, we might be able to get an idea that he is somewhere, well, definitely not there. He's probably somewhere out here in one of these buildings, I'd assume, and he's looking towards this area, probably near to the rail yard in central Voronezh, near to the train station. We're not exactly sure, but it looks like it might have also come from this industrial site just a little bit to the north, as generally the geolocation there would line up, and it also looks like there's a couple of higher rise buildings that would line up with the kind of site picture that we're getting in this clip, which appears to be low density residential, but still with some Brezhnevkas kind of scattered around out there in the general area where that strike landed, right over there. So this looks to be coming from the central industrial area of Voronezh, but we'll of course have to wait for further geolocation because once again, folks, I'm doing this off the hip and it's a very rough estimate at this point, but definitely looks to be a strategically landed hit and not falling debris as the Russians are going to end up calling it. Also, Mandy, it looks like you were able to find us more footage from the Taganrog attacks.
Yeah, we have some more footage from Taganrog as well, some more explosions there. It looks like it could have been actually multiple explosions in Taganrog, so several confirmed hits.
And so let's take a look at these clips.
Это куда? Это в дом.
We hear the air raid sirens.
Fisher Price noises in the distance. It sounds like Russian air defense sirens.
Bro, they got them slide whistles going off out there, man. They got that whoop, whoop, bro. It's like, get that trash out of here.
Даже.
Now they're just cycling through the sound effects.
Фу, блин. Вот так.
But definitely a dead-on hit in Taganrog. Moving us on from this clip and on into our next one, we are also able to see this as well. Once again, showing the impact. And we also hear the air raid sirens there. Just had to try and stop and listen to that really quickly. We can also see this video as well. Which appears to just be a bystander talking about the sound of the explosion that they just heard, although they don't have video of it. And we also have this picture here, once again, showing either the explosion in Taganrog or another explosion that has occurred in Taganrog. So right now, live on air, we can confirm that the cities of Voronezh and Taganrog are still taking direct hits, which, interestingly enough, are very close to Ukraine relative to the other attacks that Ukraine is probably going to be conducting, meaning that there are drones in the air right now in large numbers of the Russian Federation that are traveling even farther, and we'll mostly be getting news throughout the entirety of the show at this point of further attacks and damage as these drones continue to make it deeper in and to each city that's on the target list for this round of attacks. In the meantime, a lot of people are talking about these significant attacks that the Ukrainians have been conducting on key Russian ports today, which before we get on into this poll, I do want to make sure to round out a little bit more additional news, considering that the drone attacks were very wide sweeping today in southern Russia and also in the occupied territories of Ukraine. We're going to knock out a couple of more things before we get to this poll, so that way y'all can have as much information as y'all can to make your decision on the poll if you haven't voted yet. The port of Tuapse also came under attack as well last night, which we saw in this clip. Oh, bliat.
Big hits.
Very big hits, bliat.
Is that AA fire?
It might be. The explosion kind of sounded more like a direct hit than anything. It didn't have the sharpness of like a air defense missile traveling over the speed of sound. So I think it might be an impact, but there also was intermittent air defense out there. But you wouldn't believe it, Matthew. This drone attack that we were watching actually did hit the refinery compound again, the one that billowed the toxic smoke over the city for days. That was about to warrant a full evacuation of the city. They hit it again tonight, so we don't know if a major fire has broken out yet. This happened almost right before we went on the show, but it is another direct impact on the refinery and oil loading port of the port of Tuapse.
Yeah, it's a very big hit.
And moving us on out of that, we've also been able to hear that within the area of the town of, let me make sure I get this right, Primorsko-Akhtarsk on the eastern coast of the Sea of Azov, a Russian drone storage facility was also hit. We were able to see that from a Russian military blogger channel that put out an alert that the facility had been directly hit and was confirmed to be hit. We're still waiting for video and picture evidence on that. In the meantime, while Ukrainian drones have been flying all the way into the Russian Federation in these areas, Ukrainian drones near to the front line, or not really near to the front line anymore, this is about 70 miles behind it, have been raining hell on the M14 highway again today to an extent that is almost unbelievable, to be entirely honest with y'all. We have seen that the Ukrainians have started to publish their own footage showing their attacks and what they're looking like on this highway between Mariupol and Melitopol, and it is a field of utter carnage at this point. Ukrainian drones are quite literally picking and choosing the exact vehicles and targets they're going to strike and destroy in real time on this highway 24/7. The losses are beginning to pile up at such a rate, it doesn't really appear that the Russians will be able to sustain continued supplies along this highway for much longer. We'll probably start to see the attrition rate is going to reach well above 60% here in the near future, as we're already hearing that the attrition rate is around 20 to 30%, and these range attacks only started to happen about a couple of weeks ago, meaning that in the next couple of weeks, it's definitely going to be hitting 60% if it keeps going at the current rate.
You know what's surprising is the Russians haven't done really anything to course correct now that they're getting hit left and right behind the rear lines like this with their logistics. They just keep sending trucks through. Like, they're just like, well, you know, maybe some will make it through. They just keep sending them. They're not really doing anything to really like form defenses. They're not temporarily halting the trucks. They're not doing anything. They're just like plow through and hope you make it, basically.
You know, honestly, it seems like the Russian tactic of old of, we're very slow to adapt. It'll probably take us 2 years to fix this problem, which they certainly don't have in this situation, and we'll try and figure it out over the next 2 years. Because they haven't even diverted any traffic from what we know, folks, down towards the Kerch Bridge at this point. It looks like traffic is still going at full-blown volumes on the M14 highway through southern Ukraine to try and keep the supply lines running, and right now, the attrition is insane. The attrition is insane really throughout this entire area south of Ukraine and in the occupied territories because of these long-range drone attacks. The Russians can't keep their oil ports running, they can't keep the Russian Black Sea Fleet rolling, and they also can't keep the supplies loaded and going as well on the M14, because Ukrainian drone attacks are making near every single normal operation impossible at this point. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this right now, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so today we're seeing that the Russians themselves are starting to acknowledge that their logistics are getting hampered so bad that they're about to run into a failure, like a failure that could actually cause a significant frontline compromise for the Russians in this area. Also, do you happen to have that post, by the way? Because there was a Russian blogger, a military blogger, that put out a post earlier today, and it was very dire. And in fact, it sounded like our analysis to a T. Actually, let me go grab this real quick because I don't think
Yeah, I
you
don't
have it.
think I have
I have it
that
down
one.
here. Yeah, I have it down here at the bottom real quick. Let me go grab this because I need y'all to see what this guy was saying because it sounds like identical to the comments we were making last night. But let's see here if I can find it on the spot real quick. Let's see here. It's in here somewhere. Filibuster for a second. Let me see if I can spot it.
Generally, folks, sadly, I don't put those types of posts on the map for the large report because Russian opinions are kind of like a dime a dozen. But this one is actually quite an interesting one. I just didn't put it on the map. So hopefully we'll be able to get it really soon because the situation is looking so grim that it appears that not only are we starting to analyze the situation as bleak for the Russian army, but even the Russians and the Russian military bloggers are beginning to see that the situation is incredibly grim for their strategic outlook within the Southern Front. And here, after we get through this poll and also get through this post by the Russian military blogger, it becomes obviously clear that the front line is already suffering from this supply shortage that we're seeing at the moment right now because of these Ukrainian attacks on Russian supplies in the deep behind-line areas like the M14 highway and the Azov coastline. So hopefully we'll be able to get
Okay.
that post.
So I just put it into the likes tab. Go grab this one real quick. It's from Preston Stewart, actually. He took it off of Telegram and reposted it onto Twitter. Let's take a read of this real quick. So here's what he's saying right here. They're saying all of these hysterics are primarily related to the total defeat in the drone war. They say those familiar with the situation on the key logistical routes of the new regions know that the Ukrainians already completely dominate there and systematically knock out everything that moves on those routes. And the scale of the losses is already huge, but they continue to increase every month, and all roadside areas are littered with burned trucks and military equipment, and thus the roads that were previously considered deep rear areas, that is about 30 kilometers and further from the Lugansk People's Republic, are now losing more than 100 vehicles a week just on logistics. They said by the autumn, this will lead to a total paralysis of all the logistics from the Kharkiv region to Crimea, which will make the continuation of military operations completely impossible. And this is coming from the Russians, by the way. He said that there is no countermeasures for it, and damn it, that's the outcome. That's coming from a Russian mill blogger, by the way, so he's not very optimistic. And that's the propaganda view of it, by the way. It's actually worse than he's even saying it, which we'll get to in just a second. But Enforcer, do you want to weigh in on that right there real quick? Because that's a pretty wild admission from the Russians.
Big dub for Preston Stewart, by the way. He did put this out. I actually did have this post on the map. It's just that I was looking for a military blogger. But outside of that, I would have to say that the situation does look pretty bleak. It's rather grim. Because I've seen some people, well, not a lot. I always say a lot, but I've seen some people in the chat say, "Oh, but this is just a prediction. It doesn't mean anything." But here's the problem with that idea: the Russian Federation relies, much like every army, on supplies to be able to reach their troops to keep them running. Ammunition doesn't grow out of the ground spontaneously when an infantryman steps foot into the muds of Ukraine. Then ammunition has to be brought to them on a truck, and they have to have enough ammunition to last them throughout the rest of the war, or a continuous supply of it coming through to keep them fighting through the rest of the war. They also have to have food, they have to have replacement equipment, replacement body armor if they get any, replacement uniforms, replacement boots. They have to get everything that y'all need for daily life supplied to them continuously by the significant logistical chain that exists behind the lines. If the Ukrainians make it impossible for that tonnage of supplies of whatever type it is to get to the front lines to the Russian army that's currently fighting right now, they do not have ammunition to shoot at the Ukrainians. They don't have drones to use against the Ukrainians. They don't have anything to even eat or drink. You can't really fight a war if you're starving to death and you're dying of thirst, and you also don't have bullets to shoot at Ukraine. That means that the frontline situation quite literally becomes untenable, and because the supply lines have been severed in the rear from these drone attacks, the Russians will have to retreat however far they need to until they can access a significant flow, well, a reasonable flow of supplies to be able to keep their armed forces running. So I generally say that this Russian military blogger's analysis is a little bit over the top, I'll have to admit, because it probably won't completely stop. There will be some supplies to get through, but in the practical sense, the front lines will collapse over the next several months if this supply situation does not change for the Russians right now. This is quite literally an untenable strategic position to be in, and a lot of people aren't talking about that right now in the chat. So Matthew, what are people's opinions on this, and what are your opinions on this as well?
So it looks like about 42% of the audience said the collapse of logistics has already begun for the Russian forces in the southern region of occupied Ukraine. 29% said the collapse will take months, and 21% said the collapse will take only weeks. And I would argue that the collapse has already begun. Yesterday, we went over the post that the Russians are making, stating that they're running low on drones, and the Ukrainians are fielding so many against the Russian frontline forces, which is the primary method, by the way, for defeating the Russians and eliminating each soldier. About 80% to 90% of the frontline deaths of the Russians are conducted by drone warfare. So if the Russians fall behind in that aspect, then not only can they defend, they can't really defend against drones at all at that point. They also can't conduct offensive operations either against the Ukrainians. And it sounds like they're already running low, and that's probably because they can't get the drones at the front line because the trucks are getting hit way behind the lines in occupied Ukrainian territory. So I would argue, I'm with the 42%. I would say the collapse is already here, and we'll start seeing the effects start appearing on video and also anecdotal evidence very shortly. We're waiting on some more of that. We're already hearing the Russians fearmonger like crazy, and really it's not fearmongering, it's the truth. The collapse is going to be coming soon. So we'll just see how bad it's going to get. But Enforcer, what say you?
This is pretty bad. Like, there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's pretty bad. Here's why. Let me remind everyone here. Why in the world did Napoleon lose the Napoleonic Wars? He lost them because he invaded Russia during the winter, and the Russians conducted the scorched earth doctrine to destroy any sort of usable resources that Napoleon's army could use to feed itself and arm itself for its continued march deeper into Russia. And because their supply lines were so long and there wasn't enough supplies to support the army of Napoleon in the winter, they froze to death and had to conduct a flying retreat out of Moscow and lost the entire army of the French Empire in the process. Why in the world did Germany lose the Second World War, at least as quickly as they did? That's because Germany decided in 1941 to invade the Soviet Union in Operation Barbarossa, and during that time, the Soviet Union also conducted a scorched earth doctrine which destroyed any of the supplies that the German army could use to live off the land and to be able to continue their offensive deeper into Moscow. Because of that, Germany's supply lines became far too stretched for the amount of forces that they were attempting to supply over the distance that they were trying to supply them on, and because of that, the supply lines collapsed, and we saw, also due to the fact that the Nazis didn't really prepare for any winter warfare either because they assumed that the conflict would be over before then, that the German army started to stall. This allowed the Soviet Union enough time to get into the sweet Lend-Lease from the United States that helped to fortify their supply lines, and they were able to slowly push them back all the way across Eastern Europe and back to Berlin over the next 3 years. So clearly, losing supply lines or having supply lines that are stretched way too thin, that are supplying too little to a force too big, will lead to an army being defeated or utterly collapsing. Those are just two examples pertaining to Russia, but there is an endless amount of examples like this throughout every war. Really, most every war is lost due to a failure of logistics when you look at it in reality. Why in the world did the Empire of Japan lose? They just didn't have the supply capacity or the production capabilities of the United States in the Second World War. That's as simple as it gets. Why in the world did the Confederacy lose against the Union? They didn't have the supply capacity like the Union had and the industrial output during the Civil War. Simple equations. It's very simple to see that the Russians do not have and are losing the supply capacity that they would need to be able to continue this war effectively against the Ukrainians, even on the defensive. If the Russian army does not have food to eat, water to drink, and bullets to shoot, they are not able to hold the frontline positions that they have at the moment right now, and they will inevitably start to lose the front. It's not going to be immediate, though. It'll probably take a couple of months, so I would generally be with a group that says it'll probably take a couple of months, because we're starting to see indications that the front is getting fragile, but it usually takes months for supply shortages like this to really set in and cause irreparable damage to the Russian position in Ukraine. But outside of that, we actually have breaking news that's happened on air at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so I'm getting some new anecdotal evidence here that apparently what was used in that video that we just watched from, let me check the location one more time, make sure I got this. So apparently in Taganrog at the air base there, the locals are reporting that missiles were used and not drones. I'm currently seeing some allegations and anecdotal evidence that maybe the Storm Shadow missiles might have been used possibly in Simferopol and also maybe even in Taganrog as well. That would be a little bit unusual, I will say, because a Storm Shadow is something that's kind of rare for Ukraine to field. It's a very expensive weapon, and largely it's reserved for very high value targets for the most part. So they're saying that it could have been a Storm Shadow strike. It looks like some Russian back channels are also suggesting that as well, and it does appear that's the case. They're saying, and also it looks like the Russians were warning that there was a Storm Shadow preemptive strike that was going to be taking place on Crimea as well. So it sounds like it's plausible. There's also some pictures coming out showing a whole bunch of air defense missile fire going up in one singular location. So I don't know. Like that's a question mark. What do you think, Enforcer? Could it have been a Storm Shadow attack? It seems a little bit strange.
I would say probably not. I don't believe that the British or the French have given permission for the Scalp or the Storm Shadow to be used on Russian territory. In some instances, by the way, we have seen them used before, but I mean quite literally just right across the border. It's very rarely ever far into Russia. So I would say that this attack on Taganrog would be probably outside the permission that the British and the French would give to Ukraine to conduct an attack with. It could have been a Flamingo, or it could have been possibly a Bars cruise missile, the smaller type, because those are Ukrainian made, so Ukrainians obviously have permission to use those anywhere they would want.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe it could be the Bars because the Bars jet-powered drone that Ukraine fields, it looks and sounds like a cruise missile. Like when you see it flying in, it has the jet sound to it. It has like a little small turbojet on it, and it has the two little like winglets at the front, like you would see a cruise missile would have on it. So I think the locals might have gotten confused and saw one of those Bars coming in and thought that maybe it was like a Storm Shadow. Although I would argue that the silhouette of a Storm Shadow is a lot different than the Bars. Even at that, it's also a lot larger too. The Bars is a smaller weapon than a Storm Shadow. So maybe they just got confused. Possibly that seems more likely.
And let me see, folks. I'm trying to get y'all pictures here because I see a lot of people saying, what the hell's a Bars and what's a Storm Shadow? So I'll quickly show y'all some of the pictures. So the Storm Shadow, or the Scalp EG, which was an Anglo-French design concept that has been produced and fielded by both the British Army, well, really the British Armed Forces and the French Armed Forces, is a low-visibility cruise missile that has a range of about 250 to 300 miles. We have seen that the British and French have supplied a significant amount of these to the armed forces of Ukraine over the course of several years, but generally these have been limited to attacks inside of occupied Ukrainian territory. So usually we see these conducting attacks on Donetsk, Luhansk, and also Crimea when they're ever used. And considering that we did hear of explosions in Simferopol and apparently the sound of missiles in that area, it could be very likely that that was a Storm Shadow. However, we've not really seen that the British or the French have given a huge amount of permission, and generally have to give permission on a case-by-case basis for the Ukrainians to ever use these types of weapons on Russian soil. Many of their uses on Russian cities are exceptionally rare, even if they are in range. And this is to make sure that the war doesn't escalate out of control. On the other hand, however, the Ukrainians do have, and honestly, if you looked at these while they were flying, the Storm Shadow and the Scalp are smaller, but they kind of do look a little bit similar, because Ukrainians also have this whopper of a missile called the FP-5 Flamingo. The FP-5 Flamingo is basically Ukraine's answer to the Tomahawk cruise missile, since nobody would really give them one. They kind of just made their own, and what's even crazier is that they souped the thing up. It has a larger explosive warhead than the Tomahawk, a longer range, it also travels at a very similar speed, and its accuracy is just slightly less. And when I mean slightly less, it is going to hit its target, but it might be a couple of feet margin of error from the actual site that it was supposed to hit. These things have been incredibly effective when we've seen them used against Russian targets inside of the Russian Federation, and this could have been used against Taganrog, but we're not entirely sure at the moment. And then the last option, this is the most affordable and probably the most fieldable option for Ukraine, would be the Bars cruise missile. These are an incredibly small cruise missile that actually uses a hobby jet engine to be able to propel the missile to its target, that are a lot smaller, have a very significant explosive yield, mind you all, but also are cheaper and easier to produce. Therefore, there's a larger number of them, and the Ukrainians can field these in far larger numbers than either the Storm Shadow or the Flamingo. Considering that all cruise missiles kind of have a similar outline and design to them, although they're different significantly in size, the Flamingo being the largest, the Scout being the mid-range size weapon, and the bars being incredibly small compared to the other two. It could have been most likely the Flamingo or the bars, considering that permission being given by the French or the British to conduct an attack on a Russian city with a British or French missile probably was not given. So I have a feeling they're probably misinformed about what type of missile just hit their city.
Yeah, maybe so. But in the meantime, though, outside of that, we do have some images emerging from Sevastopol. It looks like we're getting our first images here where we can kind of see exactly what has been hit. It looks like it's turning daylight over there right now. The sky is orange. And also in one image here, you can see there is fire coming from a location right there. If I'm not mistaken, by the way, I think I've seen this spot right here hit before. Is this something having to do with the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet or something right here?
It's something definitely to do with the port facilities, because you see the red-roofed buildings right around the port facility. This looks like the southern side. Let me see here, folks. That's not the red-roofed buildings we're looking for. Those look like shit. Yeah, those were rough. Let's see. Oh, man, let's see. It might be a little bit difficult to try and find these on the spot, folks, so give me just a quick second. So it's generally, it does have an angled roof to it. It's not flat. So it could be one of these buildings in this area around right here. The Russian naval headquarters was quite literally leveled off the face of the planet a little while ago, so I don't think that one would be hit again, but it definitely looks to be on the southern side of the port of Sevastopol and somewhere within the naval facilities.
Yeah, it does. Those red roof buildings right there look very familiar. It does harken back to when Ukraine struck the headquarters building where all the top naval leaders were hanging out at, and apparently took several of them out like 2 years ago. But this looks very, very similar. So I would not be surprised to hear about possibly some losses of personnel, maybe, since it looks like they targeted a building.
It does look like they targeted a building. Unfortunately, folks, we just can't say exactly what building has been hit yet, because it's hidden behind some others. I really want to find this and geolocate this on air, but I have to say, folks, sadly, it's hard to do that, because on air, at least, because we kind of have to keep the show rolling, and this generally stops the momentum. So I probably won't be able to do a really good geolocation to find out exactly where this is on air.
So I got some info right now. We got this info right here on the air. The enforcer said we can't geolocate it, but we can bring you some other news though. The Russians are claiming right now that this airstrike hit the building of the Air Force headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet on Gogol Street in Sevastopol. Reports a subscriber of the Crimean Wind Channel, which is they say well connected and things like that inside of Russia. So I was wondering, it looked like a headquarters building, like that general area that we were looking at kind of had the same look of the naval part of the headquarters that got hit 2 years ago. So it sounds like it was the Air Force headquarters possibly. Well, of course, we'll have to get more confirmation on that, but it appears to be the early reports are from the Russians is that was what was hit. If that was the building that was indeed hit, I would be surprised if we don't hear about casualties coming out of that building of some of the top commanders that could have been hanging out in there.
This is probably responsible for the operation of Russian rotary and fixed-wing aviation in Crimea, which is a fairly significant sort of an operation to hit and destroy as far as a command center. Unfortunately, folks, I cannot find a Google Street in Sevastopol. This might be a Russian renaming of a street, because generally all of these streets on Google have retained their Ukrainian names and haven't been renamed to whatever the hell the Russians are calling them. So I might not be able to find this street on air, because the maps in Russia will show Google Street, but the ones we have probably will not. So it's somewhere within this area, however. This is where most of the headquarters are at inside of Sevastopol, so we can confirm that at a minimum. So generally the geolocation was fairly close. We just don't know exactly where the building is, although we do have a satellite picture of it right there.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait for more details on that. But if that gets confirmed, that could be a very, very big loss for the Russians, because we saw that they were firing some air defense. It obviously missed a couple of them. We saw one of the misses on camera. So that could be a big loss. We'll just have to wait and see.
And generally, folks, the loss is significant, and how it will impact the front is that the actual centralized command headquarters that was continuing normal operations has been hit. So whatever backup headquarters the Russians have, they do have one that's guaranteed. They're going to have to be trying to come online, and this means that there might be some combat operations that are being derailed by this attack that the Ukrainians were trying to derail to make sure that they weren't going to be followed through on, as they might have some sort of a negative effect on their defensive or offensive conditions in the southern front of the moment, considering that this headquarters would be operating most of the Russian rotary and fixed-wing aviation in Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea, because we generally know that the front right now is divvied up into two parts by Russia, both of them commanded out of Rostov-on-Don, but they have the southern front, which consists of Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson, and then they have the eastern front, or as they would call it, the western front, which is inside of Luhansk and Donetsk, and also Kharkiv to a limited extent. So I hope that does address that well, at least from what we're seeing right now, but it does look like there was a significant hit that we can now confirm within Sevastopol. But I hope we've answered that poll incredibly well, and also gotten some more breaking news to y'all here at this moment right now that's currently happening in the midst of these major attacks, and it looks like they're definitely major without a shadow of a doubt. Before we move on into the rest of our news, however, I do want to say a humongous thanks to everybody who has been watching the show so far tonight. We've had 16.8 thousand people here at the peak, and 60,000 people have watched the stream in an hour. That's 1,000 people a minute, and we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all are continuing to watch this show and considering it to be your primary source of news. I hope that we have been able to cover the news incredibly well so far tonight, because it does appear that we still have a lot to go and a lot of major breaking news that is coming out at this moment. But before we get on into the rest of our news in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and also the rest of the world, including the Middle East, I do want to make sure that we take a brief moment to get 3 questions from the chat before we move on into the rest of our news. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first one goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that very generous $100 support, by the way, one of the largest ones of the night, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And Hokey said, will Ukraine stop at the border if they keep winning?
I would generally say yes. If the Ukrainians were somehow able to sweep the field today and push the Russians back as far as they wanted to, with no limitations, they'd stop at the Ukrainian border, and that would be the end of it. Because the war, how the war is structured right now, it's entirely a defensive war for Ukraine and an offensive war for Russia. There isn't really a concept, at least on the Ukrainian end, of unconditional victory over the Russian Federation, because that would lead to them getting nuked. So considering the fact that they could get nuked if they started to push into Russia pretty significantly, they are going to stop at the Ukrainian border. All this war is for the Ukrainians is attempting to fight to see that the Ukrainian state survives, to also see that the Russian Federation is expelled out of the state of Ukraine and its 1991 borders as well. So once they make it to a border anywhere, they're going to stop. And the reason why we know that already is the smaller battles, like, for example, the battles in the Sumy Oblast, the battles in the Kharkiv Oblast, and others, where the Ukrainians were actually able to repel and defeat Russian offensives in those areas. Once they're pushed back across the border, the Ukrainian offensive stops right then and there, and they do not push forward. The Ukrainians do not have any public claims against Russian lands that they would attempt to annex or capture, and so continuing the war to take over Russian land that would be given back to Russia anyways once the war ends generally wouldn't be a strategic use of resources, and they would decide to just not push in. So the answer to your question is yes. They would stop at the border if they make it to it. And I have a feeling that with how things are going in the South, they're probably going to be making it to some border at some time, probably within the next year, if this keeps up the way it is. But a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Hokey Redneck, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to have someone here from Washington, D.C. who respects that train and rode that Amtrak Crescent all the way down to Tuscaloosa, which is Tuscaloosa, by the way, before anyone's like, oh! But anyways, a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our second super chat of the night is going to go to Bobby, also known as LC39A, to all the channel legends out there. And he put in a $100 support. And thank you very much, Bobby, for that support. And also, it is good to see you once again. He's back once again and throwing in that massive support, by the way, and we're very appreciative. He said, this is my happy cha-ching to you.
And a big thanks to you for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, LC39A, this thing wouldn't be possible. I gotta say, it's a great thing to see you back. I see you in the live chat. every once in a while, very intermittently recently, but we're always happy to have folks back. It's good to see you again, and I hope that you've been enjoying the stream lately. We always love to know that folks have been with us for years, like you and BC Skyman and many others who have been with us for an incredibly long amount of time. I think right now, well, Hokey Redneck's definitely been around for years. Glock Who's There, who we're about to get to in a second, has also been around for a long time, and there are a load of people in the live chat right now who have been here for eons, like AF Kaplan, Max Shabui, and many others that I'm seeing right now, like Mestiza. I gotta say, it's an incredible thing to know that folks like you are still sticking around and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep the lights on, we wouldn't be able to pay the bills, and we wouldn't be able to keep doing this as our full-time job each and every day to keep on top of things and report them as accurately as we can. So massive thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news from around the world. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and this one's going to go to Mr. Glock Who's There, another channel legend, and he's back again, just like Bobby as well. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that $50 support. Also very generous of you, by the way. He said, any news from the FSB finding magnetic mines on the Russian LNG tanker and LSA rocks? Well, I saw that story the other day. I think the Enforcer saw that too. I don't think we covered it. I didn't cover it in my video. I'll be honest. I saw the story and I was like, you know, first of all, I got to take the FSB's word for it. That's the problem number one that I had with the story. Number two, all it was really anecdotal evidence. They didn't provide any pictures I could see on my end. So that's why generally I didn't report on it for the most part. But it is possible that it happened. It's just very shaky evidence. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would definitely have to agree. I don't really think there's a lot of corroboration in that story. The FSB isn't really what people make it out to be. It's not really that good at anything. We've seen the Ukrainians style on the FSB for years now with the SBU in Ukraine. And so I would generally say I don't really believe much of what they put out. Most everything they say is a fabrication. And then on top of that, they've been proven to be incredibly incompetent in intelligence and counterintelligence gathering throughout the whole of the war. So I would generally discredit most everything that they put out given that fact. But a humongous thanks to you for that incredible support, Glock Who's There, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that in mind, it is time for us to move on out of this question segment and back into the news, as we have been able to hear of some major developments near to the Belarusian border. As many of y'all know, the drama of Belarus possibly entering the war or not has been ongoing for a couple of weeks now. It seems that the Ukrainians are saying, intelligence-wise, they're starting to get indications that Belarus may be trying to join the conflict. And at the earliest, that would most likely happen in autumn. So there is a good whiles away, a couple of months at least, before we start to see that Belarus would seriously get involved and conduct armed actions against Ukraine. And right now, we're in what we would call the diplomatic pre-phase of the war, meaning that right now there's some diplomatic jockeying to be done, some possible deterrents, some possible threats, and it might get the Belarusians to back off of whatever their plans or ambitions are. The Belarusians are trying to make a case at this very moment right now that has led the Ukrainians to just tell them frankly today what kind of a position Belarus really is in. And this is the claim that Belarus made that was apparently the straw that broke the camel's back. Belarus's Security Council secretary claimed that Ukrainian drones are regularly crossing into Belarusian airspace and, in some cases, trying to hit border infrastructure. Speaking in Moscow, Alexander Volfovich said that Belarus recorded 166 drones over the past week that violated Belarusian airspace and used air defenses 59 times. He also claimed Ukraine is mining border areas and conducting reconnaissance of Belarusian territory. This statement,
that's kind of a strange idea, isn't it? If the Belarusians are saying so many drones are violating their airspace, then I would imagine the Belarusians probably have some evidence of that. Like, for example, when they fire on these drones that they're claiming are coming across their border that are Ukrainian, maybe they have some, some debris from some of these drones or something like that. It's like, evidence would be nice when you make a claim quite like that.
I gotta say that's a pretty good point. And it's just a little curious, folks. It's a little curious. If there's so many drones that have flown into Belarus, why in the world is not a single villager in Belarus near to the border area taking a video, letting us hear those drones flying over, or recording the Belarusian air defenses firing at them and shooting them down? They claim that they've used 59 different air defenses and attacks against the drones to try and shoot them down. If this was such a prevalent thing on the Belarusian border, we would have footage of it. or pictures of it at a minimum, or they would have some actual shred of recorded or filmed proof of whatever is going on inside of Belarus. And they don't. There is not a single shred of evidence to show that a single Ukrainian drone has made it into Belarus or has done anything to Belarus at all. The reason why the Belarusians are putting this out is that this is called constructing a casus belli. Casus belli is a Latin word or a Latin phrase meaning a justification for war. And it's a lot easier to say than justification for a war. And so I'm going to be using it because while it's kind of academic, now that I've laid out the definition, I hope that everyone's able to follow along. The fact that the Belarusians are trying to artificially create a casus belli is showing us that Ukrainian intelligence is probably accurate. Now we're kind of getting an idea as well as to what Ukrainian intelligence must have picked up on, which isn't any sort of armed forces movements or deployments around the Belarusian border. Apparently, they must have an insider in the government in Minsk in Belarus that was able to deliver information back to Ukraine that the Belarusian government is working on fabricating a justification to get involved in the war. Because if there is ever a justification to get involved in a war, this is exactly what would justify a country getting involved in a conflict. Also, the fact that they added in that Ukraine is mining border areas and conducting reconnaissance of Belarusian territory is attempting to frame the Ukrainian preemptive defensive actions on their border as preparatory offensive actions. So that way, if their offensive didn't go well, they have a defensive line to immediately fall back to, which is how the Belarusians are trying to present the current Ukrainian defensive works that are being made along the Belarusian border. This is showing us quite clearly at this point that the Belarusians are starting to go through the process, which would take up until about autumn, for them to justify themselves entering the conflict and make it seem to the international stage or the international world that they have some sort of a justification to go into the conflict. The Ukrainians have made it clear they're not flying with this shit at all. And they stated today that they've identified 500 targets on the territory of Belarus that would be hit if Lukashenko declares to enter the war on the side of Russia. So they have already made,
also, that was Magyar that said that, wasn't it? I think that Magyar came out and made that statement today, the commander of the Ukrainian drone forces.
Yeah, he was the one, man. They made it, bro. Belarus said, they're doing something to us, and there's literally nothing happening to him. Magyar said, "We will burn your country to cinders." It's like, man, damn.
Honestly, though, it's the right response. It's like if Belarus wants to play stupid and start playing games, it's like if you want to jump into the war, Ukraine's ready for it. So it's like Belarus's military is not any better than the Russians' military. In fact, it could be worse potentially. We don't know, but yeah, that's a pretty baller move to literally say, "Oh, we got literally the sights aimed in on your country." By the way, so if you want to play, go at it.
Man, they said we're going to blow that mustache off Lukashenko. They said we're not playing. But beyond that, the interesting thing about this, folks, is that a lot of people will say, "Well, this is just words being thrown around by both sides." But here's what's interesting about the diplomatic pre-war phase: is that the words mean a lot right now because there's not going to be any shooting for months. Right now, everybody's trying to jockey to figure out if Belarus is willing to actually get involved in the war, if their justifications would have any merit, or if they look like they have any merit, and whether they'd be willing to take the risk. So right now, Ukraine making threats like these are actually somewhat significant. These are diplomatic threats of deterrence. They're making it clear that if the Belarusians enter the conflict in any way, they are going to have the upper hand against Belarus from day one. And the funny reality is that they would. Belarus doesn't have an armed force that is built to stand on its own and fight on its own, and it hasn't for 21 years since the Common Defense Pact they made with Russia in 2005, which turned the Belarusian military into a logistical puppet army of the Russians on their own home soil. So generally, Belarus wouldn't be able to pull off any sort of offensive operations against Ukraine unless if it was the Russians launching an expeditionary force from Belarusian territory into Ukraine. Regardless, the Ukrainians are making it clear they're going to start turning Belarus into a pile of burnt ash like an old campfire if they try and get involved in any way, shape, or form, like they're starting to work towards at the moment right now in the diplomatic phase. So what are people saying about this right now, Matthew? What are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so Belarus is now accusing Ukraine of regularly sending drones into Belarusian airspace, and they say that Putin's informed. I guess that's their equivalent of calling mother, I guess. Like, hey, help, Putin, help! What do you think about this? 63% said it's a false flag provocation that's in the works. 23% says just an intimidation tactic, and 10% said it seems like it could be true. And I would say to me, it sounds like the beginning of a false flag. That's what it sounds like to me. Belarus has been moving around forces in their country. They've, of course, been participating in Russian nuclear drills. We also heard the reports that apparently Russia had moved nuclear weapons into Belarus recently. So Belarus is becoming very active for a country that doesn't want to get involved in the war, which to me makes me think that the Ukrainian intelligence is accurate. I've been saying that for a while. I believe the Ukrainians. I think the Belarusians are actively planning to get involved in the war by either letting the Russians attack from Belarusian territory into Ukraine from the north, or Belarus themselves might use their military to attack Ukraine potentially. But I think Belarus is pretty much planning on getting involved at this point. I think it's becoming clear, and now they're coming up with a reason to get involved. So not looking good. And if Belarus does get involved, that starts bringing up the question of whether or not NATO is going to step in at that point. Because if all these countries like Belarus, Russia, etc., start ganging up on Ukraine, I don't think NATO is going to stand by. The U.S. might, because the U.S. right now is confused. But I think countries like Poland and other ones, I think they might decide to step in if that happens. So we could be looking at something major here. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's definitely a false flag provocation. Right now, the Belarusians are trying to build up justification to enter the war that would look legitimate, but it's probably not going to work all too well. If the Ukrainians are able to scare them off, which honestly they probably would be able to, the Belarusians are going to be up the creek without a paddle, and they're probably going to back off before they actually commit to anything in finality that actually starts an armed conflict on the border. Let me put it this way, folks. Lukashenko has an army that is run on a budget of $1.19 billion. Zohran Mandami, who is the mayor of New York City, could wipe this guy's ass because the NYPD has a budget of $6.4 billion, and it's a police force. Just to put this into perspective of what in the world the Belarusian military really is. The Russians might try and use Belarus as a launching pad to conduct an offensive in the northern area of Ukraine, but that's still going to open up Belarus to a lot of risk. The Ukrainians are making it clear that if the Belarusians ever permit the Russian army or themselves to conduct an offensive on Ukrainian territory from Belarus, they are going to start bombing everything that's of value in Belarus, which isn't really a lot, but still, for the Belarusians, it's everything they have. So this might get the Belarusians to go, the risk is pretty significant, the benefits don't really exist. We might not want to let this happen, and we might have to tell Putin that even though we're a puppet, we really can't do that, because it's going to open us up to a great deal of harm and damage. And also, if Belarus joins the conflict, Belarus is going to get obliterated, because unlike Russia, Belarus doesn't have all of the sanctions that Russia has on it. So they are in this nice little middle ground economically. There are some sanctions on them, I do want to make it clear, but not a whole lot of them. If they get directly involved in the conflict, everybody's going to be smacking sanctions on Belarus like there's no tomorrow. So not only are the Ukrainians going to be destroying anything of value industrially in Belarus, they're also going to be seeing that they're going to be completely cut off from any trade with anyone else economically, which isn't going to do them well whatsoever. So generally, I think that they're probably going to be waffling on this one in the future because the Ukrainians are making it pretty clear there's a lot of risk to trying to get involved in this conflict. Also, isn't it kind of unbelievable, Matthew, that the NYPD literally spends $6.30 for every dollar that Belarus spends for its military?
Yeah, that's kind of wild, actually. That is kind of crazy. I'm not really worried about Belarus necessarily militarily. Like, of course, it would be a new aspect that Ukraine has to deal with. I'm more worried about it being used as a launching point for new attacks by the Russian forces because it is, of course, close to Kyiv, so that's a problem. So that's more of what I'm worried about. I'm worried about it being used by the Russians to launch new attacks.
That's true, but even still, the Russians are pretty hard spent to even try new attacks because they have, as current fronts, like just to note them all, they have the Sumy front, they also have the Vovchansk front, they then have the entirety of the Kupiansk, Svatove, Seberonsky, Slovyansk and Kramatorsk, Pokrovsk, the Konstantinivka, Velika Novosilka, or as it's now called the Novopavlivka, and then also the Wheelopol, Orikiv, and Kherson fronts, to name all of the active fronts right now. Each one of them requires almost an entire combined arms army or several divisions to be able to operate them and sustain those fronts, and we do understand that at the given moment right now, Russia is actually losing more men at the front than they're replacing by recruitment on the daily, meaning that their manpower reserves are actively depleting at the moment right now, and to just keep active action going on their existing fronts throughout Ukraine, they have to put uncommitted regiments or divisions onto the front just to be able to try and replace the ongoing losses. So the ability of Russia possibly conducting an offensive from Belarus, it's there, but it'd be pretty hard to sustain that for any period of time, and that offensive would probably peter out, especially if they start to take heavy losses, because there isn't going to be any significant reinforcements coming in after the opening offensive.
I would have to disagree. Like Ms. Diesel was saying in the live chat, Russia is beginning mobilization. We just got that report 24 hours ago. Russia is very strongly considering mobilizing a lot more people into the military. So I think, and of course, the timeline might not be immediate. Like we might not see this invasion from Belarus until maybe like the October season, perhaps like autumn. We might not see it until then. So it could be months down the road that we see this actually break out and happen. And by then, Putin had called up mobilization possibly by then. So I think the Russians can they can manufacture enough equipment and get the manpower if they need it to pull something like that off, because that's a very juicy prospect. If Lukashenko is somehow strong-armed into letting Russia use that territory to launch attacks, I mean, it's like the golden ticket for Russia. Not that they would win, but it's a very juicy opportunity because Kyiv is right there, and they could literally lob artillery, missile attacks, etc., and try to level Kyiv just from across the border if they wanted to. So I think they would find a way to make that happen if Lukashenko gave in.
Maybe, but there's I have to say there's a lot of buts, because if we also look at the Russian logistical side of the situation, what armor, because they do have to have armor for an opening offensive, because the front would be mobile at that point, it wouldn't be secured and static yet. If they don't really have a lot of armor to conduct that opening offensive with, that's going to greatly slow down any offensive progress, meaning they're going to be moving in a crawl to be able to get anywhere, because they don't have any armor support to help them with direct fires to be able to suppress and push back the Ukrainians in an opening offensive. And also the logistics side is woefully horrendous at this point, especially with the southern front. And then to not even add that in, if the Russians start to see a front collapse in the southern front, they're probably going to have to start diverting all of their forces for a hypothetical northern offensive to the south, just to try and stabilize the front and stop the bleed of the square mileage that they'd be losing at that point if the supply situation becomes so bad they start seeing a total front collapse in that area.
Maybe. Well, we'll just have to see on this one right here. But the one I'm not certain about a whole lot with Belarus and Russia in that whole situation. I'm sort of like taking a good educated guesses. The one thing that I am pretty confident about at this point is I would say we can take the Ukrainian intelligence and largely put pretty good confidence behind it that Belarus will get involved one way or another in the war. I'm personally feeling very confident about that intelligence. It's starting to look like it's pretty concrete.
It is looking like it is fairly concrete. I mean, I would have to agree as well. It's very concrete looking at this point with what we've heard today. But I'm thinking, folks, there's so many extra variables and factors that just really aren't in Russia's favor right now, that this would most likely entirely be on Belarus if it does happen, and the risk doesn't really weigh out the reward for Belarus if they did join in. So I'm kind of like, I'm more of the camp that I'm thinking that the Belarusians are probably going to chicken out and back off before they ever get committed fully to letting the Russians conduct an offensive from their territory, or they conduct an offensive of their own from their own territory. I'm thinking there's a pretty decent possibility that they're probably going to chicken out. But that's just me, and of course there's a lot of things that can happen in between now and October or the autumn that might change that situation to where it becomes a lot more likely they join, or they completely back out altogether. And we just haven't seen enough turnout yet to know exactly what's going to be happening. So with that in mind, I hope we have addressed that breaking news development well. And we do have to move you all on. Also, by the way, folks, I do have to include this picture right here just to get a little laugh for everybody. The Belarusian military is at $1.1 billion a month, and for $6 billion, the NYPD gets parking enforcement trikes that they get to peddle around in New York City. You know, it would be something. I honestly, folks, am really interested. How in the world would the NYPD do if they went up against the Belarusian military with the kind of funding both of them have? I actually think the NYPD could wipe the floor. Imagine that. He's got a gun! Man, like, they're going to be going off. But anyways, moving us on out of that whole rabbit hole about the spending disparity, it is time for us to move on out of Europe for a brief moment and to move. You know something, folks? I totally forgot to mention to y'all that there were some frontline losses in the south today that are indicators that Russia's supply situation is already showing some warnings at this point. But we'll be getting to that here in a little bit. We're going to be hopping on down into the Middle East, though, because we do have another major.
Poll.
Bol. So a lot of people are talking about the Bol before we move on down to the Middle East, because we did get to hear, and I'll cover this news really quickly before we move on, because this would be pertinent to the poll, that the Russian Federation is threatening to get European heads rolling in Kyiv in their upcoming attacks. Right now, we are seeing that the Ukrainians are trying to prepare for these attacks as much as possible, and today, many employees of state-owned enterprises were sent instructions on how to behave during an armed threat in a closed space. This is what we would call in the United States a mass shooting. That's how the Ukrainians call it inside of the state of Ukraine. They contain detailed algorithms of actions in case of appropriate situations. I gotta say, folks, the Ukrainians have clinical talk down to a science. Like the United States has corporate talk, the Ukrainians have clinical talk, detailed algorithms of actions in case of appropriate situations. That is like the most Soviet-esque talk I've ever. But anyways, Ukraine must be ready for any development of events, including possible Russian terrorist attacks, similar to the one that was recently committed by an inadequate person, which is someone with mental issues, in the Holivsky district of Kyiv. So we do understand the Ukrainians are preparing for the possibility of a terrorist attack on the ground, such as a mass shooting happening in Kyiv, as a part of the larger Russian attack against Kyiv parameters. We also were able to hear that according to the Russian State Duma, or the State Duma Committee, Kartopolov, which is a very hard name to pronounce, he stated that Russia will not strike the Verkhovna Rada, which is the Ukrainian parliament, and the office of the president of Zelensky as part of the strikes that are coming up, because it doesn't consider these as decision-making centers. That's a little stupid. That's that's like saying, we are going to attack America, but we're not going to blow up the Capitol or the White House because that's not where the decisions are made. It's like, where would they be made? Like, literally, the Ukrainian government runs you. What do they mean by that? Like, the Ukrainian government runs the state of Ukraine. Those are the decision-making centers. But according to the State Duma, apparently they're not. I've never heard of that one. That one was a shock to me. So apparently they're going to blow up everything else in Kyiv but the actual government buildings in Kyiv, at least according to the State Duma committee. So that one, I'm not going to lie, folks, is a little bit odd. I don't really understand where in the hell they're going with that, but we'll see what happens in the future as far as their attacks on the city. Additionally, we also were able to hear that Dmitry Medvedev stated the following today. Medvedev, by the way, doesn't hold an official Russian governmental position. This guy just happens to be an advisor to Putin, so that's really his only prevalence within the government. But he stated on Twitter today that the EU has said it will maintain its diplomatic presence in Kyiv unchanged despite Russia's warnings. Well, apparently they've got diplomats to spare and need to trim the headcount, suggesting that they would start blowing up and killing European diplomats that are currently inside of Kyiv in their upcoming attacks, giving a direct threat to those diplomats and their safety. So at the moment, a lot of people are talking about that threat. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so top Russian official, which is Medvedev, of course, he's a top Russian official. It's a sad day, but yeah, he is. He threatened to launch missiles at EU diplomats in Kyiv to what he calls trim the count, which is, insane to say, by the way. That's a wild statement to make. Well, that's nothing new from Medvedev, though. He makes crazy statements all the time. He wants to nuke the world half the day, and then when he gets a little bit of beverage, he kind of calms down a little bit. But what do you think about that? 42% said Russia would not actually do that because they know the consequences. 37% said Russia does plan to target them. And 16% said it's a 50-50 chance. And I was wondering yesterday when Russia made the threat to level Kyiv, and I made a whole video about that the other day, that Putin had basically given the order to level Kyiv. And from what we know, it's still coming. It just hadn't happened yet, but it's in the works. I was wondering if the U.S. and Europe was going to simply pull their diplomats out of the situation and let Kyiv get destroyed. But both the U.S. and the EU, they're leaving their diplomats inside of Kyiv. So that runs completely contrary to the Russian evacuation orders, by the way. Putin and the Russians had literally called up and said, get your people out ASAP because we're going to start hitting the whole area inside of Kyiv, and you better get your people out if you love them. So it looks like the U.S. and the EU said, screw that, we're leaving them there, and you can just shut up. So honestly, that was the best move to make. But I don't think Russia would actually do that. Like, they know the consequences of doing something like that is going to be bad, and it's going to be hard for the U.S. and Europe to hide that. Like, even if they wanted to cover that up, that's going to be a very tough thing to hide because footage will come out that one of those embassies were hit, and it's going to be assumed that there are casualties, and that means that diplomats were hit that were in NATO countries. And I don't think Russia would go that far because they know if they do something like that, that could get ugly quick. And I think that threat's going to fall flat. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have a feeling that the threat is going to fall flat as well. There's no way in hell that the Russians are going to level Kyiv legitimately. It's a fanciful notion. They don't really have the ability to do that, for one, unless they used a nuclear weapon, which they're definitely not going to use. And also on top of that, the other thing is that the whole entire thing from top to bottom is a war crime, especially if they start killing diplomats left and right in Kyiv. That is an act of war in itself and would most likely require a response from most countries whose diplomats were directly killed by Russian illegal actions in the city of Kyiv. So I would be with the 42% as well. So moving us on out of Europa for a moment in the war in Ukraine, it is time for us to move on down and into the Middle East because we have news. We got news coming out of the Middle East. And a lot of people are going, oh, peace in the Middle East, is it here? No. No, that's wishful thinking. There's never going to be peace in the Middle East. Go ahead and trash that concept. There is nothing but war in the Middle East because we're the Department of War. But moving on to the actual news, we have been able to hear that the Iranians did not apparently take the whole attack on their country kindly from yesterday. And I have to give you all a little bit of clarification as to what happened yesterday. According to U.S. military sources, apparently, the U.S. military strikes, according to the New York Times, against targets in southern Iran on Monday came after intelligence analysts detected a series of potentially threatening Iranian military actions in the 24 hours leading up to the strikes. U.S. military analysts also detected activity at some of Iran's surface-to-air missile sites near the Strait of Hormuz that threaten land and carrier-based attack planes operating in the region as part of the naval blockade. So according to what we've now heard today, the attacks yesterday were not defensive whatsoever. They quite literally were preemptive attacks against the Iranians because we saw that there was a situation unfolding on the ground that looked like it might threaten us at some point in the future, so we decided to go ahead and blow it up. And I saw someone say it's preemptive defensive strikes. Well, not quite.
Oh man, preemptive defensive. How can it be? It can't be both. They can't be pre and defensive. It's impossible.
Yeah, what this is called, folks, is a preemptive attack, because generally what happens in preemptive attacks is that you're seeing that someone is conducting an action that is very threatening to you, and they're probably going to act at some point in the future, and so instead of waiting for them to act and getting the jump on you, you bomb them first to get the jump. That's how that works. There is no such thing as a preemptive defensive where you're flying over another country and dropping a bomb on them. That's called an attack. That would be like, for example, that'd be like, say, here's a better example. That'd be like Israel saying, oh, at some point in the future, these random people in this area around us might do something bad to us in the future, so we're going to go ahead and just drop a bomb on them right now. That would be called a preemptive attack. Or for another example, the Russian Federation saying, Ukraine looks like they're doing something weird in some labs in their country and they're creating this thing that's going to kill all Russians, so we're going to go ahead and invade them right now. That is called a preemptive attack or an invasion. And so that's what the U.S. apparently did yesterday. Was not a defensive action whatsoever. It was quite literally a unilateral breaking of the ceasefire for the United States of America against Iran in a preemptive attack that we then packaged when it happened as a defensive action. So we broke the ceasefire yesterday, just straight up. I mean, technically that was the beginning of the war again yesterday from the U.S.'s end, because that is the first recorded preemptive attack that we've seen. Most every other action that we've seen in the ceasefire period by the United States has been a defensive action, except for this one. This one is clearly a preemptive attack by the United States. The Iranians did not take it lightly. They're now saying today, and a myriad of different statements, that they will respond and not hesitate in defending themselves. Another statement came out where they stated that regional powers will no longer serve as a shield for U.S. bases, and the U.S. will no longer have a safe haven in the region. They then also reiterated once more that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps vowed to retaliate against violations of the ceasefire after a renewed bout of fighting in which the U.S. struck missile launchers in southern Iran. Here's something interesting. It's been 24 hours and they've done nothing.
Not a thing?
Nothing. Nada. Zilch.
Zilch.
Zero, blah. Like, nothing. They have done nothing for 24 hours. And this tells me something, folks. I'm of the strong belief they're going to do nothing. Because,
No.
yes, notice the wordage. It's the same as the Gulf states that do nothing. Like, when the UAE and Saudi Arabia gets hit, and they put out that little letter that says, we condemn the acts in the strongest of terms and we reserve the right to respond, yet they don't really ever respond. They're doing the same thing. They're making it sound like, for saving face purposes, they're making it sound like they're going to respond, but the fact that they haven't responded immediately afterwards, which is usually the Iranian go-to, is that they respond usually within 3 to 4 hours, and they haven't yet, and it's been 24 hours, so 6 4-hour periods have passed now. They're not going to do anything.
Yeah, yesterday when we were on the air, I was expecting to cover the retaliation at some point. Like, we ran the stream yesterday for 4 hours and sort of like drug out the question segment a little bit longer than usual to see if something was going to happen. But the U.S. did their strikes. They hit the Iranian missile launcher sites. They hit Bandar Abbas. They hit some other places too, apparently, from the sounds of it, including some airstrips. And then from Iran, we got nothing but crickets. Crickets. That's all we got from them. Literally crickets. It was kind of weird. I was assuming that maybe it was taking them some time to get the message to the bunker boy leader over there, Mujtaba, who's hiding out. But apparently, it looks like nobody's going to respond, at least in the short term.
I'm telling y'all, folks, the Iranian, I will have to say, the Iranian government, the Islamic regime, is a load of bastards, but they are playing this pretty smart at the moment, because they mean, hell or high water, they're going to drag out the ceasefire period for as long as they can to screw us over economically. Because right now, they're kind of tying America's hands. If they had started shooting at us right now, that would have restarted the war, and we could have started to move immediately to reopen the strait. But because the United States either doesn't want to start the conflict on our end, for unknown reasons, or we're attempting to peace talk them, and the Iranians want to keep us in that endless loop of talks that get nowhere, they have realized that instead of directly responding to these attacks right now, they're just going to wait this whole thing out, because with each passing week, the pressure on the Western world grows larger. The economies start doing worse. Voters that are going to be voting in upcoming elections, the midterms, are going to be getting angrier. It puts significant pressure on the U.S. government that Iran doesn't have on them to come to a solution and to possibly agree to Iran's demands just to try and end the whole thing. That looks to be what they're doing. And this response to the U.S. attacks, the preemptive attacks from yesterday, is giving us a clear answer of what the Iranians are doing. And I think this is showing that my analysis was dead on the nail. They are not trying to forcibly restart the conflict. They're going to wait this out for as long as they can until the war inevitably resumes, to buy themselves as much time and build as much economic pressure on the United States as they can. And I think a lot of people are actually apparently split on this, but it looks like some people are agreeing with my end of this whole thing a little bit more than the opposite. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so do you believe that the IRGC is actually going to retaliate, or is it simply a bunch of nothing and a bunch of nothing burger? And it looks like 37% said Iran will ignore the attacks and keep stalling because it suits them better. 34% said Iran will restart the war in just days, and 24% said Iran will probably do something small to get even. And I would say this. I'm beginning to think that Iran is going to try to ignore it and wait this out. The IRGC, I'm sure, is chomping at the bits to get back to the fighting, but it looks like they're being temporarily restrained because they believe that they'll have the upper hand advantage to keep putting pressure on the United States. The U.S. blockade's not working too, by the way. Like, I know people are holding out hope for that. That's not really working that well. We're seeing vessels being lit out of the strait that are Chinese vessels that are bringing Iranian oil to the Chinese, and that's a direct result of the meeting with Xi Jinping and the U.S. president. So it's not hampering Iran enough to cause their collapse. The blockade is generally becoming pretty much for looks only at this point. So I would say that the only country that's going to be hurting from this whole situation, unless we restart the war here in the United States on Iran, is going to be the United States. We're the ones going to be paying the price for it. Iran is going to get to escape the wrath, at least for now they are, until the attacks restart. Because like I said, the blockade is pretty much for looks only at this point. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm with the 40% without a doubt. Also, this thing is starting to go heavily in this direction. The Iranians are going to keep ignoring this and stalling because it's in their interest to. The U.S. militarily can wipe the floor against them in the strait. They know that, and we know that if we got back into the conflict. There's no doubt about it. It will take some time, but we will come out on top and clear out the blockade. That is a guarantee. I can promise you all that once that started. And they know that as well as us. But, well, I don't know if the U.S. administration currently knows that. It seems like they're working off the idea that the U.S. military is now apparently made out of wet paper. But outside of that, the Iranians know that, and they're not wanting to get back into the conflict because once they do, that blockade might be broken and all of their leverage is over. If they just sit this whole thing out and try and pretend like nothing's going on and just continue the blockade and continue to ramp up the economic pressure on us, we might end up folding and just agreeing to most of their demands to get the strait reopened. And that's what they're probably working towards at this moment right now. So I would have to be well within the 39%. They're going to keep ignoring and stalling because this is well within their interest to do so. And time is on their side in this situation, not ours. And that's why we shouldn't afford them a single extra day like we are right now. So with that, we are moving on out of this poll and into the rest of the news that we have within the area. As we've also been able to hear that CENTCOM had to clarify today that Project Freedom has not resumed. Apparently, we have Central Command coming out here fact-checking people. A recent media report claims that the U.S. Navy has restarted escorting or assisting commercial vessels during transits through the Strait of Hormuz. False. I don't know who in the... that was generally false the first time, because I never saw a U.S. warship escort anyone through, even during Project Freedom for like the 36 hours that it happened during. I didn't see it. And I remember a whole bunch of ships just going through unescorted and getting blown up. I remember that pretty clearly, so I don't really think this was true ever, even during Project Freedom. But according to Central Command, they said that Project Freedom has not resumed, and U.S. forces are not currently escorting commercial vessels through the strait. That's according to their claim. We've also been able to hear additionally that the Iranians did get footage of them tracking what may have been an F-35. It just looks to be a bright white blob out there, but they were tracking it with something.
Don't they get a warning in the cockpit if they're getting tracked by an active target lock like that?
But this is a Majid, Matthew. This is a man-pad. These don't actually give out active pings like a radar that can be picked up.
Oh, this is that passive one. Honestly, that could be anything, man. That could be an F-18, well, I don't know about an F-16, but maybe an F-18. That could be anything.
Well, let's take a look here. We kind of got a clearer look at it right... Oh, hell no, that ain't no F-35. The wing profile's wrong. Like, that ain't no F-35. That's probably an F-18 if I had to take a guess at it. Because an F-35's wings are shaped like a trapezoid. This is more so shaped like an F-18's wing structure.
Yeah, it's probably just the run-of-the-mill F-18 from a carrier or something, or I don't know, from an air base. It doesn't look like anything crazy.
Man, I gotta say... It's something else right here, something else. But moving us on out of that, we've also been able to see that the Iranians did show footage of them shooting down an MQ-9, inshallah, mashallah, in this clip right here. So here's the clip. Man, they threw up that text at the beginning, man. I thought this was the return of a certain group in Syria. I was like, damn. The swing of the sword, the clash of the blade, the swing of the knife. Oh, man, but there's the Reaper.
Oh, man. Oh no, not another Reaper.
That thing really did get destroyed, like legitimately.
You know, I think the current number is we've lost about $1 billion worth of drones at this point. So this is nothing. Like at this point, it's a drop in the bucket. Like what's another one? I mean, you know, if they take another one out, it's just what it is.
Also, these things are unmanned, so you know, while they're expensive, at the end of the day, it's not as big of a thing as losing a manned aircraft like an F-15 or anything like that. But that did confirm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I said yeah.
Oh, I thought you were about to continue on. You said yeah. It sounded like you're about to continue.
I was thinking about it. I was about to make a comment about how crappy the resolution on their camera was. Also, I was curious how they're recording that. If it's on a man pad, it's like what are they doing? Putting a GoPro up to the viewfinder?
Oh no, they actually have it. Like it's actually like kind of has like a gun camera for their sight. Like all of them do. That's also what the Ukrainians use to film their gun sites. They all kind of have like a built-in recorder. So a little bit interesting with that, but that's how they get the footage out. But according to Iran, they say that the air defenses identified and shot down an MQ-9, which we did confirm, after what it called an American violation of Iranian airspace in the Persian Gulf. The IRGC also said that it fired at an RQ-4, which is a Triton, and an F-35, forcing them to leave the area, and warned it reserves the right to respond to any ceasefire violation. So the Iranians are, once again, just out there doing their thing. So moving us on out of that bit of news, and on out of the Strait of Hormuz, we've also been able to hear that in the midst of this all, Iran did make it clear yesterday, folks, that if any strikes are conducted on Lebanon or Hezbollah, mashallah, we will respond in full force to the Israeli bastards. So Netanyahu decided that that's what they're going to do today. So the Israelis have now declared a full a reserve emergency mobilization, including artillery troops recently released from service, as preparations grow for expanded defensive operations in Lebanon amid continued Hezbollah attacks and ceasefire violations. Then we also were able to hear from our boy Mr. Yuhu that they said that they are operating with large forces on the ground in southern Lebanon and taking control of strategic areas, according to one of his statements. His comments at the opening of a security cabinet meeting came after the Israeli military expanded their ground operations in southern Lebanon beyond a demarcation line that Israel had set up several kilometers inside Lebanon after an April 16th ceasefire with Hezbollah. So now the Israelis are go for broke inside of Lebanon, and they are trying to instigate the situation as much as they can. I gotta say, folks, there's no better ally like Israel. You can try and somehow, even if it's not a good idea, to try and, not fan the flames of the war and try and calm the whole thing down, and the Israelis come in with a steel chair and just start slamming Hezbollah over the head to try and force the Iranians to respond and get the whole thing going.
It's not a smart idea, though. Is that the Israelis are getting their asses whooped inside of Lebanon. I don't know if people are seeing this. We might have some footage of it.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, we do right here. But the FPV drones, like we're about to see right here in this video, the Hezbollah is starting to use these very heavily. And now the Israelis, regardless of what they're saying from their official media, because we got to take that with a grain of salt, they're getting their asses whooped right now because they don't have a defense against these FPVs, just like the U.S. military wouldn't either. We've never fought an FPV war quite like that. The Ukrainians and Russians have, but nobody else has to a large degree. So defenses are slim, to say the least. They're also, apparently, they had one of their aircraft shot at by a SAM missile earlier today. So that's an unwise move to go headlong back into Lebanon under those circumstances.
It really is. It doesn't seem to be going well. It doesn't really. Because in Bin Jabal, which is this town right here, it's one of the more significant ones that Israel controls at the moment, Hezbollah drones are just flying in and hitting Israeli forces on a whim. Here's an Israeli Humvee roaring down this dirt road in the town, and the drone is literally just lining up and waiting for them at this point. When you see the vehicle take a sharp right turn, it looks like they're trying to come to a stop and everyone hop out and run away. And we see it making it up to this building here and then stopping. Actually, now it's going up this road, as a matter of fact. But it's now
running?
Yeah, it's running. And now we can see all of the soldiers hopping out of the back. And I'd have to be honest with y'all, there's a couple of more in there. The Hezbollah forces clearly did get a significant hit on them in this clip.
Yeah, that's why it's stupid to start going in there and starting a whole new front and a whole new situation, because it's you don't even have a proper defense against the drone. So should y'all be so eager to get the thing kicked back off inside of Lebanon? It's I get the fact that Hezbollah is a threat, but this doesn't seem very wise.
And we're seeing, folks, that this is starting to become a lot more common. I mean, way more common than it ever has been. Hezbollah is starting to implement these to a significant extent, and we're starting to see the damage is racking up against the Israelis heavily because of these strikes. We've also been able to see that as well. We're starting to see, here, for example, that Israel is blanketing the northern border with more than 250,000 square meters of anti-drone netting and secured contracts for 280,000 square meters more. European suppliers are being pushed to fast-track production to be able to try and supply the Israelis. Problem is, though, is that this is only a passive defense, and it's not an active defense against drones, which the Israelis do not possess in any capacity, shape, or form. They don't even have any training in the IDF at this moment to be able to deal with and shoot down drones, or jam them in any way that will be able to take them down. So At the moment, the Israeli Defense Forces are completely in the wide open against Hezbollah attacks by drone, and it doesn't really look like they're going to be creating any effective defenses against that anytime soon, showing that this offensive, while still ongoing, is going to be taking some significant losses here in the future. We also were able to see strikes on Sokhmor as well by the Israeli Air Force, as during the day, in the midst of everything going on the ground in the south, the Israeli Air Force was conducting significant strikes throughout the entirety of eastern Lebanon, including this area here, and also the Bekaa Valley, which we'll be getting to here in a moment. Moving us on up into the Bekaa Valley, now that that clip is ended, we have two separate clips showing the smoke rising from airstrikes in the Bekaa Valley, and we also were able to see videos showing the strikes as well here in this clip, and also this one. Moving us on out of that footage, we've also been able to hear that near to the southern suburb of Beirut, it does appear that the U.S. has been able to put enough pressure on Israel to get them to pull the strikes on Dahya off of the table, apparently due to U.S. opposition. But outside of that, the Israelis are trying to get the war restarted and really trying to kick the hornet's nest about every single way that they can at this point, regardless of the U.S.'s interest to stall the war for as long as possible, which I do have to say is not within U.S. interests, but I'd also had to say it's not really a great thing to just watch an ally blatantly blowing our interests to the wind, regardless whether they're smart or not, and basically doing whatever the hell they can to go against our interests and do it as they wish inside of the region. But that's currently what we're seeing inside of Lebanon. Also, just to cover what we've been seeing in Gaza for a brief moment, the Israeli Air Force apparently did kill a Hamas military leader named Mohammed Oder inside of Gaza today. We don't really know where, but they claim that they blew him up. And then we also were able to see that down near Rafah, apparently there's these groups called the Anti-Hamas Popular Forces, which is some form of a Israeli militia that is now patrolling the area in Rafah. Don't really know a lot about them, but the fact that they're whipping around in Toyota Hiluxes is not really instilling a great deal of confidence that these people are, above board. Generally, people who drive around Toyota Hiluxes in the Middle East have very questionable moral compasses.
I like how they're whipping those things around with like truckfuls of guys. Like I'm surprised those suspensions can handle it. Like the way they're whipping these things around. Look at these guys; they look like standing fine gentlemen. Oh,
man, these guys look like they're about to hop on my ship and tell me they're the captain. Like I don't really think these people look like that decent.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a world where a Toyota pickup of any year model with a guy with a machine gun packed full of dudes in the back of the bed is ever going to look civilized ever. I don't think it ever will.
Man, these jets look like they're straight out of the Jalisco state fighting the Mexican government. I mean, honestly, man, they literally look like that. It's not really an inspiring sort of a look. Like I don't really know what they're going to be doing in Rafah, but I'm kind of on the fence as to whether they're going to be doing any good or not. But moving us on out of the Middle East, that is, well, one more thing. There was a vessel that was attacked today by the UK MTO. Before we move on, this is literally the last thing we have to cover in the Middle East, and I was kind of debating on whether we would or wouldn't. But the UK MTO did receive a report of an incident 60 nautical miles east of Muscat, Oman. The master of a tanker reports of an external explosion port side aft close to the waterline. The crew and the vessel are safe, although the master reports some bunker fuel has discharged into the sea. That's bunker sea fuel, by the way. Authorities are investigating. Vessels are advised to transit with caution and reports any suspicious activity to the UK MTO. So the Iranians did conduct an attack against a merchant vessel today, apparently a tanker that was moored near Muscat, Oman, and apparently there has been a limited fuel spill as a result of that attack by the Iranians. Now, moving us on out of the Middle East, we've also been able to hear that within North Korea today, they did fire off a couple of missiles, but not really that big of a deal. It was test firings into the surrounding seas, kind of normal fare for them.
Godzilla.
Huh?
Did you see Godzilla?
Yeah, I did see him. Look at him, little fella.
Oh, look at that. It's Godzilla. That's crazy work right there. That caught me off guard right there. What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know, but Godzilla ain't even from Korea. He's from Japan. The silly gooses that put out that meme.
Oh, he traveling.
You see, if he showed up to North Korea, they probably eat him because they're hungry. I mean, in Japan, they run from him because, they got better food to eat than some, radioactive lizard.
I'll tell you, how some creatures will step in the ant mound, the ants will get them, they'll just take them down. It could be like a bird or something like that.
Yeah.
The ants are taking them down. But that'd be the way Godzilla would be if you stepped into North Korea, they would just take him down like a bunch of ants.
Right, bro. You would literally be hearing it like a nature documentary. Godzilla Godzilla has wandered upon a nest of North Koreans, and they are rather hungry. And then you just hear them all down there on the ground, long live Kim Jong-un! And then they are now beginning to climb up Godzilla, and they are bringing him down to the ground with a sequence of ropes. They're now going to feast upon the Godzilla and make sure that their village is heartily fed, until the secret police show up and then tell them that they've confiscated the bounties of nature, and then they're all sent to a gulag for their crimes against the regime.
Honestly.
Man, honestly. But remember, everybody, Godzilla is not Korean. He's Japanese. He's Japanese. I actually don't know where the hell he would go in Japan. Like, I forgot where. I know he went to Tokyo a couple of times, but I think he went to some other places other than Tokyo in some of the movies, but I'm not a huge Godzilla aficionado, folks, so, correct me if I'm wrong. But moving us on out of this whole deal in East Asia, it is time for us to also get to the United States of America. Oh, beautiful, oh, great. Anyways, moving on from that whole deal, we finally made it to America, and according to the statements that we were able to hear earlier today, there was going to be a meeting by the president at Camp David. This is the first time I've ever heard of the president going to Camp David. Usually he goes to Mar-a-Lago. But if y'all don't know...
It's called Camp David Blaine, because it's like magic. You go there and it's like magic.
Wow! Like, look at this magic!
It's a perfect place. They call it a perfect place. Camp David Blaine. They said it disappears into the forest. It's a secure location. It disappears like David, the way he does that trick. Blaine, that's what they call him, Blaine. Like a perfect bill of health, they say. Perfect bill of health. If I went into the doctor as a 25-year-old, I really doubt they'd give me a clean bill of health. That seems impossible, but perfect health.
You see, I'm 24 years old, folks. I have double major scoliosis and high blood pressure, and probably a couple of other medical afflictions I don't know of. But apparently the president, who's got purple hands, going to the doctor, is got a clean bill of health. I don't have purple hands. I don't even have that. It's it's honestly a miracle.
Man, I have never gone into the doctor like when I used to go for like those little well visits, like back when I was younger. I don't do those anymore. Like I just go to the doctor if I have a problem now. But back when I used to do this, I would never come out of the doctor's office and they said, this kid is in perfect health. There was always something like, well, the potassium could come down or something like that. There was always something like there's no such thing as coming out of the doctor's office with perfect health. Like that's not a thing, especially not at 80 years old. It's like, that's not happening.
I mean,
I'm like, that may be the official story, but I'm not really buying it.
He's 80. His hands are purple. They have to cover him in makeup. He's thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, and apparently the guy's somehow in perfect health. Like, it's like, that's just flat. Like, that can't be true. Like, it can't be. There's no way in hell you're that old and have no medical problems. It's literally, like, it's scientifically impossible. You would have to be from the Kim dynasty to have no medical issues, and that's just for the public to know about. They clearly have medical issues. But this is Camp David. If some of y'all have never heard about this place in the current administration, there's good reason for it. Basically, the president's never been here. He usually goes to Mar-a-Lago. But this is basically a little forest-side retreat for the presidents that, aren't loaded with billions of dollars and have, like, their own private golf courses and whatnot. And most presidents historically would come here to get away from the White House if they weren't going golfing somewhere, because for some reason every president loves golf. I'm personally not a big fan of golf. But this is Camp David right here. It's in the middle of nowhere. That's what the buildings look like on Camp David. So I think you kind of get the idea why the president might not go there. His tastes are probably a little higher than that. And also to show you what it looks like at the entrance, which you can't see too well, this right here is the road into Camp David. Very unassuming looking, except for these signs right here that say, stop, restricted area, do not enter, violators will be fined. And then they have do not enter signs further on back. They also have a secured perimeter around the entirety of the facility where the trees have been cut, and there's a double fenced area, and there's also a whole bunch of microphones and whatnot, and a whole bunch of detection systems around Camp David to make sure that no nuts just wander on into the middle of it. So there was a planned meeting that was going to be happening here, and from what we know, Fox News, which is the one who got this information, has confirmed that every cabinet member is expected to participate, including the outgoing director of national intelligence. The session will focus on determining the administration's next move toward a wider agreement with Tehran, even as the existing ceasefire shows signs of strain. Then, literally just 3 hours later, they canceled the whole thing, and this is what the president said. Based on the possible bad weather conditions tomorrow, we'll be having our cabinet meeting in the White House, and we'll be postponing the cabinet trip to Camp David. So, all that explanation was for
the
nothing.
weather is sunny tomorrow, by the way.
I think they just didn't want to go. like,
That's some bad foul weather. That sun shining bright. You might get a sunburn out there.
damn, look at the sun. It burns my skin. Get inside, man. God dang. I tell you, I can't go to Camp David. Have you seen the place? Have you seen it? Let me see if I can get you some more pictures of Camp David, because not really a lot of people talk about it. The last president before this one went there loads, but this is the main lodge building. That's the main building that the president hangs out in, kind of, when he's here. I mean, it's nice. I mean, it's not anything crazy, and honestly, I wouldn't expect it to be anything crazy. It's kind of lucky that presidents even have a place like this to go. Like, I would say it should be up in question whether they should even have a place like this. Because imagine how much money it takes to build this place, buy the land, and then secure the place 24/7, because they can't just, abandon it. What if someone put something in there while they weren't paying attention, and then they came back, secured the place, and then missed it? So the place has got to be secured 24/7. It costs a good bit of money. So, it's kind of lucky that they have a place like this at all. But apparently the president does not want to go here for some reason. I wonder why. But anyways, moving us on out of Camp David and that whole deal, it is time for us now to move on out of the United States. Now that whole deal that's now going to be held in the White House, and it's now time for us to move on and over back into Europe, because we need to cover everything else we have left in Europe, which is still quite a good deal, but it's mostly videos, action-packed videos, so we'll probably start knocking them out pretty fast. We did get to hear, however, that according to some sources from FITEX Network, Spiegel reports that the U.S. plans to significantly reduce military contributions for NATO allies in a crisis, including jets, warships, mid-air refueling aircraft, and drones. The U.S. will only provide half the previous number of strategic bombers, reduce the number of U.S. Air Force fighter jets by a third, make fewer destroyers available, and no longer provide any submarines to NATO. The U.S. also plans to scale back the provision of armed drone models and force Europe to provide its own reconnaissance drones. So that doesn't really sound to be that positive at the moment, to be entirely frank with y'all, and it sounds like it's jeopardizing our strategic position. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are having a meeting with the E3, Germany, France, and the UK, on the upcoming threat that the Russians have made to destroy Kyiv. So we do understand that that's happening in the moment right now. Additionally, there's also been some GPS jamming that's now been picked up in the Baltic Sea waters near Finland, near to the Gulf of Finland, posing a threat to civilian shipping. There's already been significant electronic warfare jamming that's been going on around Kaliningrad on a near continuous basis, and with the electronic warfare jamming now happening in the Gulf of Finland, it looks like the Russians are trying to create an electronic warfare jamming ring around the Baltic states to try and kind of isolate them from any sort of communications with the outside world. We've also been able to hear, moving us all the way back into the war in Ukraine, that there has been some very significant and interesting developments today in the location unknowns blade. We were able to hear that the Ukrainians are now testing a brand new Estonian jet-powered interceptor that's also rocket-propelled from the ground. Check this thing out. It's actually pretty cool. There it is. There it goes.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a little Estes rocket.
Yeah, honestly, that is pretty innovative, actually. That's pretty neat.
That is pretty cool. So they're trying to, folks, to get these things up to a faster speed, quicker than normal, and also on top of that, they're trying to see if they can get these things up in the air a lot faster, increasing the reaction time, and also, hopefully, the amount of time that they'll have to be able to intercept and take down a drone. We've also been able to see the Russian casualty report as well today, which, chef's kiss, 3 Bobcats! Holy moly.
That's crazy right there. 3 of them in a row. 3 of them in a row. That is crazy work right there. Let me give it a little something here. Let's see. Should I give it the clap or the air horn? Which one?
The air horn. The air horn's more hype. Yo!
Yeah, I like that right there. 3 Bobcats. I love to see it.
And according to Mystica, keeper of the records, 10 ground robotic complexes is the 5th highest daily loss. At 374 auto and fuel tanks is the 3rd highest loss. May is the highest loss month with 5 more days to the 31st. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to see that 1,010 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 7 APCs, 374 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 64 artillery pieces, 1,790 drones, 2 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, a very good day and a good thing to see. Moving us on from that, we also got to see that the Belgorod thermal power plant isn't really doing that well. I think it is thermal, but not in the way that produces energy. I think it's been burned to the ground. Here is the damage. Spinal. I thought you was a nice power plant, but you really are just a rat piece of shit. Oh, come on, Mike. Nah, F you, man. But beyond that, the damage to the Belgorod thermal power plant has been quite a lot. A lot more than I was actually anticipating, to be honest with y'all. Gotta tell y'all, folks, those Russians, they just don't seem to be doing a whole lot of that defending thing well anymore. We also got to see that some of their artillery was hit near to the Shebekino area by the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, which cooked some of them up quite nicely today, including this Tuapse bliyet.
You gotta love it when they hit a Tuapse, like a Tuapse. That's a rare one. I rarely hear that name, Tuapse.
This is a Mr. S.
As opposed to Mr. B.
Hey, yo, Mr. B! I'm giving away 500,000 artillery shots like that. Oh, man. But we can also see the D-30 getting hit here. And also a Gudzivka. Actually, a lot of these artillery systems we never see in Ukraine anymore. Interesting. A lot of You know, folks, I wonder. Does Mr. Beast like the Mr. B artillery piece? Does he?
I don't know.
Man, you said that like you're filled with drag. You're like, I don't know.
You know what they say about Mr. Beast? I'm here on this video making this video.
I am going to produce the worst slop that you've ever seen. Oh man,
it works. He's number one.
When I watch a video like that, folks, I actually feel like I'm getting lobotomized in real time. I'm like, Dad, look, he's money. I can look at people, quick editing snapshots. Like I gotta say, folks, like it works, but it's not for me. That I can tell you. But moving us on from that and into the city of Lugansk, we also were able to see an attack on Luhansk. We did get to hear of the incoming drone alerts, and we also got to see as well, just you wait, fellas, a little bit of air defense fire over the city. Holy smokes. Here it is, everybody. Witness. Oh. You hear that little snap, crackle, and pop? Oh, look at the little flashes up there. How cute. Oh. No. They keep shooting up there and they're not hitting anything. They're literally firing the same spot over like 20 seconds. The drones move. Like you're supposed to lead the target. Look, they're still shooting in the same spot.
They're not hitting anything.
They're not hitting the damn thing. Well, I tell you. Something else. Moving us on out of Lugansk, we also get to see that down in the city of Makivka, Russian forces were also hit in this area.
Obliat.
We heard, folks, that according to the coroner's office for the Russian military, they stated that these Russians were cooked well done. Or, beyond that, to congratulations, which is one step above well done. We've also been able to hear that there were strikes inside of Donetsk city as well, which we got some footage for, including that little video showing the explosion, literally cut right after. We also got this one, which was just slightly longer. And then we got this one, showing some air defense fire and letting us hear the sound of an explosion. And then we got this one. Oh. They got that snap, crackling, popping going.
Sound like the drone's getting louder.
Is here.
I think it's coming close. That's how those damn mosquitoes sound when it gets hot and there's water nearby. So it sounds just like that.
Man, like those gnats. Man, I hate gnats. Like, bro, I hate them so much. They're damn ridiculous, honestly. The way they fly right towards your mouth, it's like they want you to inhale them. But we also got to see in the Pokrovsk area that some Russians are getting cooked up by the 67th Mechanized Brigade. Oh, heavy shot. Misi Dostavka. I don't know what that means, but that's what that says. Oh, look, there's the Ukrainians down there. They dropping them supplies, and they grab that shit quick, man. Look at that. Damn, bro. Do you see him run for that? Look at that. He drops it, and then this guy's like, oh, like grabs it to me. He's like taking off. Damn.
Man, I'll tell you what, like a gremlin.
Oh, look, more supplies. Now more bombs. Missy skiddy. Man, they dropped the bomb on my bunker. They told me to have Missy skiddy. Well, like, man, they put me in the Russian army. They told me to have Tuapse.
Man, I tell you what.
Man, I tell you, man, real. Now they're just carpet bombing them.
Just a long video showing these things dropping over and over and over.
But this is war, Matthew. This is what you're seeing is advanced warfare. It's not like Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, is it?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Bro, the Ukrainians out here playing Spreadsheet Simulator, bro. They play like Excel Sim. Bro, they just out here, man, tabulating the spreadsheets, dropping bomblets. Pretty effectively, I will say. Man, the Russians are playing the damn horror games, man. They're trying to avoid the whizzing of bee of death. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are back at their outpost. Hey, drop it. And then they drop the bomblet, and it's just like a day at the office almost at this point, just in a bunker underground. Also, by the way, folks, speaking of something that we didn't cover at the beginning, we are seeing that the Russians are taking some losses within the area of the Zaporizhzhia front, because today in the area of the Kharkiv direction, the Russians actually lost about 2 square miles of ground in a retreat that was done by a single battalion tactical group. From what we can tell, it seems like they ran out of ammunition, and they had to retreat to try and buy themselves some time and to relieve the pressure on their frontline positions. So it looks like we are seeing some telltale indicators that supplies are already running low for some battalion tactical groups, which is certainly also seeing the supplies are running low at the regimental level for the regiments in this area, but it probably will take a couple of months for that to become a dangerous situation if this one continues to exist and permeate in the rear lines on the Russian supply lines on the M14. Now, moving us on through all of the rest of our footage that we have on the M14 highway, we were able to see a Russian fuel truck getting cooked. Apparently the Russians in this car are listening to Have a Hol. What the hell was that? What is this?
That's a soldier.
Bro, is that Pedro Pascal in a Russian army uniform?
Man, I can't even tell.
I don't know. Pedro Pascal, and he gets nervous, folks. Anyway, so you see the fuel truck burning over there. Toasted like smithereens. We also get to see another clip here showing more destroy. Actually, there's that post from Preston Stewart right there. It was on the map. It was on the map, Eddie. I just didn't know what I was looking for. We also get to see that near Primorsk, there was a burning tanker. Oh, they really added in that music. There's a buhanka.
I'm pretty sure those aren't supposed to go that fast. I think they were going over the speed limit.
Bro, if you were in that thing, it's literally
Bro, what the? Look at that
Is that
bus,
a
bro.
squatted bus?
Bro, it's moving so fast. The front end is like hydroplaning in the air like a boat.
Bro, meanwhile, man,
Hello?
up there, hello? Can you hear me? I'm here. Can you?
You're taking a long pause there. It's like on silent.
No, I literally did not take long pause at all. Here, listen.
Look at that
Is that
bus,
a
bro.
squatted bus?
Bro, it's moving so fast. The front end is like hydroplaning in the air like a boat.
Bro, meanwhile, man,
Hello?
up there.
Man, you're laugh.
Can you hear me? Go ahead.
Is that you?
Yeah, it's me now.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that laugh didn't come through on Discord at all. I didn't hear anything. It was just dead silent.
Man, I'm sitting there laughing to you, Chuck. You went, hello? Like, bro, I was like, oh, I'm here. I was like, the hell? But man, up there at the front, man, that bus driver's got a guy sitting right next to him. They're both smoking pipes, and the guy's playing like a sea shanty or something. They're like on the high seas on this thing.
Honestly, probably so.
And we can see the Russian fire department, the fire brigade, I believe. Another fuel truck cooked to crisp. Like Father Frost, you know. Now we see them replaying in slow motion. Oh, the Ural passing by really gives a kind of Chernobyl sort of a feel to this whole thing. Oh, look at them all. And now we can see the guy driving by from another angle on the way back. And once again showing the burned out fuel truck. Opa. I gotta say, for the Russians to be putting out a fuel truck, they sure as hell are literally standing on top of the tank. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, you know? What if it just, you know, imploded all of a sudden, you know, like there was a little sender that got in? You know, it seems to be a little unsafe. Apparently the Russians don't care, though. But moving us on out of that clip, we've also been able to see, as well, all of the attacks that were conducted just recently that were mapped out by Wankars, who was from Russia. So it does appear that there's been quite a lot of attacks within that area. So, with that, folks, it's now time for us to move on up to Kyiv, for me to tell you all the news, that we don't have a speech from Zelensky today. I tell you, folks, something else, really. You know, you would think that we would have a speech from Zelensky, but he was too busy today styling on Belarus that we didn't get one. So we'll be hopefully getting one tomorrow. But with that in mind, that is actually the end of all of the news that we have from around the world today. And with that in mind, we are going to be moving on to the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a fun time it is. We get to talk about literally anything and everything except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the 8th is relevant in modern warfare or not. So we will be making sure to get into each and every single bit of all of our questions, super chats and live chats. But I do have to say a humongous thanks to everyone who has watched again so far. We have seen that 90,000 people have watched this stream in 2 hours and 18 minutes. That's something right there. That's something. And I gotta say a humongous shout out to all of y'all once again for really putting in your time to listening to the show and getting your news from none other than here. I also gotta say, folks, I don't know what it is, but I'm going into like hyperglycemia right now. I'm like almost getting the shakes. I ate some food before the show, but apparently the food was made of air because it's like my body is not even recognizing that it ate.
If food was made of air, so what, that holographic meatloaf? Honestly, I've been like trying to hide it all night long. Hopefully, it hasn't come through. But I've been battling like a pretty bad headache all night tonight. I've been trying to like keep it under wraps, but I'm over here battling that son of a bitch like the Russians are battling off the Ukrainians right now. Not very well. So yeah, I'll look at this corporate picture. As you can see here, this individual here is in need of medical attention because the front of their brain is on fire like a fusion explosion's going off.
Bro, this one's trying to telepathically communicate.
That's a Vulcan right there. That's we're going to do this mind meld on them and get a little idea of what they're thinking.
Man, this person don't even had a headache. They just be stressing. Like, it's like, bro, calm down, man.
This bro's had it right here. Also, by the way, real quick, we do have one more piece of news to get to, by the way. Also, I'm not bitching about the headache, folks. Listen, it happens. We just power through headaches because screw those headaches, those damn things. But we have one more piece of news right here. It looks like Kadyrov's son apparently made it through the drowning the situation, and he's now come out with an energy drink. And there's a video of the great leader Kadyrov trying to sip it and have a drink. And even though they banned those, I think in Chechnya a while back, they're apparently allowing the son to come out with one. So go grab this post real quick. Show people this. This is kind of crazy right here. This was brought to my attention by Miss Disa.
Man, they hawking the energy drinks because they need Tuapse. Here's the clip.
Play the audio too, because Kadyrov sounds like a loon.
Самый лучший дом, безобидный дом. Организм энергетик дом.
The hell?
Bro's like barely alive.
Чему? Чам дом.
Oh,
bro, that guy just sounded like he took a shit in his pants. He went,
He said, oh. It sounded like it's real delicious. So with that sound,
listen to that again, folks.
Чему? Чам дом.
That's a horrible sound to make after tasting a drink. It must have tasted like ass.
What the hell is he holding in his hand? A bottle of pills?
Well, you know, it never can tell these days. But yeah, I thought this dude right here was having liver problems and stuff like that. It's like I thought the last thing you're supposed to drink if you have like liver problems is like alcohol and like heavy caffeine beverages like energy drinks.
Nothing like an energy drink at dawn with a couple of perks at dawn. Like we get that Percocet out here. Man, I was like, what the hell is that in his hand?
Sonrad handsonit babizadam.
The hell's he even saying? Look at him. You think about the cirrhosis of the liver. Bro, there's that kid right there almost drowned, I think, up here on the left.
Bro, he really needs to shave. That doesn't look that good.
Bro's out here. He's not fighting for the love of country. He's out here fighting the H2O and battling the water. Bro's having a rough time.
Bro, he fought a war with water and lost. Like, bro's like, man, I don't think he's made for the military. Also, by the way, big shout out to Abraham Lincoln. He survived the the Ford's Theater assassination. He's apparently living in Chechnya now back there.
Bro, take a look at this last dude. I was about to take a sip right here at the very end of the video. Look at his face. This dude right here.
Bro, he looks like he's about to get executed, bro.
Bro,
Like he's like,
bro. He looks like he's wincing like when he's taking a drink of this stuff right here. He literally like took a big breath and went like he went for it.
Man, also, man, like it's kind of it's like, where the hell are they even? Like, this guy's under like a pop-up tent in the middle of a field, surrounded by what appears to be security goons. You also got Dave from his cornfield in Iowa back there just standing around with a baseball cap on. Then you got the traffic warden over here right next to him. Like, let's see here. Who else do we have in the crowd? You've got
Is that a midget?
no,
That's a kid.
That's a
Never mind.
child, man. Like that's these things called children.
a little guy. I didn't know what that was. Couldn't tell, but yeah, it's just a kid.
Bro, you thought it was that dude Hospital, didn't you? Like that.
Yeah, it could have been. You know, I think he's from Dagestan. But I don't know if he's from Chechnya.
Man, they sent him to Dagestan 3 years and forget. But you know, what a weird crowd around here in this little group. Also, this guy really does look like he's about to be executed if he doesn't like the drink. So interesting. And I have to say, a big shout out to Miss Disa for sharing this with us and letting us know about this, because it is quite interesting. But anyways, moving on from that clip, which is quite the interesting one, without a doubt, it is time for us, folks, to get on into the news. And we have, well, what am I saying, folks? I'm getting brainwashed here. It's time for us to get into the questions. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our super chat questions, our live chat questions, and our Morse code decoders of the night, we have a lot of juicy questions after we just got that juicy video of the fellow there. Real good. Oh, he really loves the energy drink. He's a huge fan. But moving on to our first super chat here, this one goes to Old Warrior Fella. Thank you very much, Old Warrior, for that $50 support. Very generous of you, by the way, and a longtime channel legend, to say the least. And Old Warrior said, what I learned in a combat zone is that any vehicle loss as a combat loss will be reported as carrying everything but the toilets, so they can divert more kit into the black market. When we would lose a helicopter in combat, it would be loaded. Get a question, please.
Huh. I never knew about that, Old Warrior. I never knew that folks was out there running that hustle. They got that grind in them, like stealing and selling government property. But that is something else right there. Very interesting. I thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us and letting us know, because I've never heard about such a thing. But we will make sure to get one from the live chat in your honor, Old Warrior. And so, Matthew, what do we got from the live chat in honor of Old Warrior?
All right, so this one is going to go to none other than Jay Lewis. He said, didn't Poland say last year that if Belarus invaded Ukraine that they would enter to help?
I think they did, but generally a lot of European statements don't amount to much of anything, unfortunately, not even Polish statements. They say a lot, and then they never really follow through, because it wasn't long ago that Mr. I don't dream when I sleep and I don't think when I'm not talking in the UK said, we're going to start intercepting shadow tankers around British waters and seizing them. And then the Russians said, oh, okay, and then they faced down the British, and then they just completely backed off of that. And so, you know, European statements don't really amount to anything at this point, sadly, which is really a shame. And before people start going, the Europeans are so weak, well, it's not like U.S. statements amount to anything these days either. There's a lot of weak spines here in the West these days that are in charge. I wish we would see a little bit more follow-through. So, unfortunately, I'd have to say that while Poland did say that, and you're right on that, I'm not really sure if they'd be willing to follow through on that. So, I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a second support from Hokey Redneck. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that $50 support this time. And we do very much appreciate that, by the way. And Hokey said, would Poland stop at the Belarusian border? Also, would Deutschland get their land back on the far side of Poland? Get their land back, you say?
Get their land back. Oh.
I mean, get their land back. Man, I don't know about all that. One tank, they said. One tank.
Well, I mean, are they going to get all that back? Like, yeah, probably not. I'd assume, at least. But, you know, then again, there's also Weimar, Germany. Let me go pull up Weimar, Germany, because that's really what we're wanting to talk about right here. Go get it. The Weimar Republic. So what you're talking about is this land, I'm assuming. Not the German Empire's land, but the Weimar's land. No, they probably never get that back. There's actually no Germans that live in that part of Poland anymore because they all got ethnically removed by the Soviet government and displaced into East Germany. And then a lot of those ran to West Germany. So really there's no German people living there anymore. Now there is a significant political split, interestingly enough, in Poland that exists in former German lands. Let me go pull up the last Polish election and show you all this here because it's so interesting. It's fascinating to look at this. So here is the last Polish election right here. And all of the, like, look at this. This is former East Prussia right there. They all voted for, let's see, the mayor of Warsaw, who was running for the presidency. And then you can also see that a lot of the former German lands in most of these areas as well also voted for the mayor of Warsaw, not Karl Nawrocki, who ended up actually winning the election. It was actually a very close election in Poland. But that's something that's very interesting. You can also notice that difference as well in what used to be a part of Germany and what isn't anymore, and how their farm fields are laid out. Let me see if I can show you all that. Let's see, farm fields in Poland map. Let me see if I can show you this. This is very fascinating. Let's see here. Oh, where the hell is it? Ah, here we are. So a lot of the farm fields in eastern Poland, because they used to be a part of the Russian Empire, they're actually designed in these larger strips here, as you can see them right here. And it's very interesting because none of the fields in western Poland look like that. All the fields in western Poland are generally larger because since they were a part of Germany, industrialization reached Germany a lot quicker than anything that was a part of the Russian Empire back in the day. So the fields in most of Western Poland were actually generally larger in size, but the fields in the former part of the Russian Empire are always these long little slivers of farm field. Very interesting difference that you can still see from all the way back then, over about 100 years, more than 100 years ago at this point, that still is a holdover from the time that Poland was divided between the Russian Empire and the German Empire. A very interesting one. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that live chat well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, I see everybody in the chat talking about that Ferrari, by the way.
Oh,
I don't know if you saw this or not.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw that,
terrible.
man. Or, I've never seen anything quite like that. But I don't know what Ferrari was thinking. They just ruined their whole brand today with this. This is their new electric car they came out with. It's called the Lucci or something like that. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it's obviously Italian, so somebody can tell me how to say it. But I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but they just like went in and ruined everything today with this. How'd they go from the LaFerrari to doing something like this? This is awful, really.
I gotta say, folks, I've never seen anything this bad. That literally looks like a Tesla Model X, just with a Ferrari logo painted on the side.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but that's tough. That's real bad.
Yeah,
They'll never get my business again.
like they ever did. Oh,
Yeah, they'll never get my walk-in window shopping business again. I used to think hard about buying one of these when I walk past the window. They'll never ever hear me seeing that again.
I don't really like the whole deal with Ferrari where it's like, you have to buy this car and you have to buy two of them to get to this one. It's like, bro, I'm here to buy a car. I'm not here to be a part of your stupid ass social club. It's like, are you going to sell me the car or not? And that's something that's absolutely stupid about Ferrari. And now they're making stupid design in cars. Honestly, I don't know what it is these days, folks, but a lot of car brands are just like trying to like jump off of cliffs with their car designs. Like Jaguar did that when they got bought out by that Indian group. Now Ferrari's doing it just for no reason. And then BMW did it with that catfish grill thing that they put on all of the new BMWs. I don't know what it is, folks, but I think these people are trying to push the envelope way too far these days. And they're completely losing what made their brands worthwhile.
They don't have the vision. They don't have the vision. Like back in the day, like, you know, as companies evolve, the people start getting in charge of it that didn't necessarily have the same like passion for cars and stuff like that the prior leadership of the company had. So it starts getting more and more corporate looking, which is what pretty much every car brand's doing right now. They're getting more and more corporate. They need to let people that are actually like car enthusiasts design these again and like get into it and stop worrying so much about pinching pennies and cutting corners, putting plastic on everything, stuff like that. It's like, how about you build a good car and make it actually affordable for once.
And did y'all see the interior of this thing? Let me type in the Ferrari Lucci. Let me see.
I think it was designed by a former Apple designer, I think, on the inside of this
Look at
thing.
that.
At least that's what I'd heard.
Bro, that looks like shit. Like, that's literally a Tesla.
Every electric car that these companies have gone to have not been good. Like, it's been a failure. So I'm sure this won't be any different.
Yeah, actually, funnily enough, folks, I'm not big into cars, but I saw this today while I was roving the internet, and I said, what the hell is this? Like, I was even insulted by this. I was like, this is terrible looking. Like, good lord, look at that stupid thing. This looks like
You
this is...
know, the only car brand out there that I've seen do it right is Hyundai. Have you seen that Hyundai electric car? Like, I don't know the name. Just punch in Hyundai electric concept car and take a look at this.
Which one?
Let's see here. Punch in concept car.
Oh, let's see, Hyundai concept electric car. Is it this one?
There it is. Yeah, this thing right here.
Oh, that's really cool.
Click the one below it, the Top Gear photo right there. Yeah, there you go. The Hyundai, like, what a shocker, by the way. I wouldn't ever thought Hyundai had it in them. But this right here, I mean, this is like a masterpiece when it comes to like an electric car. Like, if you need something that's like an alternative design and looks cool, I mean, this is as cool as it gets.
Honestly, this thing is actually pretty sick. Honestly, dude, that is actually pretty cool looking. Like, that thing is really neat. Like, I would
Yeah.
unironically get one of these if I had the money.
You know why? You know why it looks cool? Is it literally looks like a copy of a DeLorean. Like for the most part, it's got the same color and everything going on, the same lines and stuff. So that's why it looks cool. But it works though. I mean, it looks fantastic. Hyundai's got some pretty cool ones. They have the N line of vehicles that's electric. It's pretty cool. I don't know the name of it. There's like a really fast like hot hatch that they have. Let's see here. Let me pull up what this is because I want to show people this real quick. Hyundai Electric. Because it's a really cool little car. It's a little bit expensive for what it is, but it's pretty cool though. Let's see here. Let me find the name of it.
Also, you know what's interesting about this though? This is an electric car, and this proves that you can literally design the body of an electric car to be as cool as you want it to, yet everyone keeps going with the stupid Tesla bubble design, like that's the only one that works. It's like you can do anything you want.
That's because it's more aerodynamic, and with electric cars, you really have to put a lot of work into aero to make the range actually like realistic. But pull up the Ioniq 5N that Hyundai has. Like that's a cool like electric hot hatch. Like I'm not a huge fan of like electric cars for the most part. Let's see here. Yeah, there it is. This thing's pretty cool. Like you have to kind of like the hatchback look for this, and the hatchbacks aren't for everybody. Some people think they're kind of dorky looking, but I think it looks pretty neat.
That's pretty cool for a hatchback. I mean, that's not bad.
It's just the only problem is it starts at 66 grand. That's the only problem with it for a car that size. That's a little bit absurd.
But I mean, what's the range going to be on this thing, the Envision 74?
I don't even think that's a real car, so they haven't said.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I thought they were actually building this thing. I was like, what's the range? Like, I was like, I'm curious, this thing's pretty cool. I saw some people say, well, do you know anyone who wants to buy an electric car? I mean, I'll be honest with y'all folks, I'm just not really a big fan of buying a car. Like, I feel like a car is neat to have as something to have, but I don't really like the whole thing about how it's essential in most parts of the United States to have a car to just get around. Like, it's a huge sink in money when you think about it to have a car when you could use, like, if there was decent public transportation, wasn't covered, like, filled with tweakers. If you could have public transportation to get around, you're saving yourself a whole bunch of money that you don't have to throw into a car, and you could still get anywhere if it existed. That's kind of why I'm like a huge proponent of bringing about actual good, high-quality public transport. Because when you think about it, why in the world would you throw $60,000 into a car that you're going to have to probably replace in 5 to 10 years when you could go and save that $60,000, not buy a car, or have to, put the payments on one over multiple years to pay it off, and use that money on something else that you want to do, like a vacation or a whole bunch of other stuff. It's like that's kind of my thing. Like it's nice to have cars, but I wish that it wasn't an essential thing to have because the whole country is designed around cars only these days.
Yeah, 100%. Also, by the way, just a fun fact. Do you know what the poor man's like Ferrari? Let's see, yeah, poor man's Ferrari. Do you know what that car is, by the way?
Is that like is relative to poor? Like, is it that Corvette new one?
Not the Corvette, not the Corvette. There's another one that's more of like I would say a competitor to the thing, or at least I consider it a competitor. Most people probably don't. But do you have any idea what it could be? It's not the Corvette.
Ooh, I wouldn't know actually.
Punch in Red Lotus Emira. Punch that in. Most people don't know about Lotus unless you're a car enthusiast because it's like a very niche British brand. They're big into racing, like F1. Like that. This is the poor man's Ferrari. This is for the poorers. It's only 100 grand.
That's sick looking though. That's really cool.
Also, I'm joking, by the way. That's obviously not a poor man's car. This is expensive as hell. It's 100 grand. It's also got a 6-cylinder in it, which some people might be turned off by because they're like 100 grand for a 6-cylinder. I want a V8, and like honestly, I couldn't blame you. I think they get the 6-cylinder out of a Toyota Camry, I think, and then they turbocharge it. At least this is what I've heard. It sounds damn good though. Like the exhaust in that thing is crazy. Like for that 6-cylinder, like it really does sound good. But yeah, this is like the mini Ferrari. It looks like it kind of looks like a 458, like the same like silhouette a little bit. But this is a fine looking car. They have some of these around Salt Lake. I've seen them driving around. Like, every time I see, them, I'm like, damn, is that a Ferrari? I'm like, no, it's a Lotus, and it sounds good, but it's definitely not a Ferrari, but it's pretty cool.
This thing is actually really cool. I like the look of it. And $100,000? What is steal? Like, I'm just kidding, by the way. That's like,
Oh, a total steal. Like, yeah, I mean, if you go for a Ferrari, they're 400 grand, I think. This is only 100. It's cheap.
clearly everybody ought to, like sell their house to get one of these. It's such a steal. I mean, it's such a deal. Is the reliability good?
I mean, it has a Toyota 6-cylinder in it, so I would assume it's pretty decent. But the problem is like people always crap on Lotus because back in the day, like there was people talking about, oh, Lotus is usually means lots of trouble, usually serious. That's what I think Clarkson said at one point. But I personally don't have experience with Lotus personally. I've never really seen these up close until I came out here to Utah, so I'm not really sure. But I think Lotus, I think most British car brands kind of have a reliability, reputational issue, like, Range Rover and stuff. Like I hear people, talking about, oh, the Range Rover, don't have a Range Rover out of warranty, you'll be in trouble. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's what I hear people saying.
I've seen loads of people driving around those retro Land Rovers around here. Have you seen them, Matthew? Like they have them like set up almost like for safari.
Yeah, the Defenders.
Yeah, let me see. Like
Not the new Defender, that old one. Yeah, these right here.
Yeah, these right here. I love those. They're so cool looking.
Yeah, I don't like that new Defender they came out with. Like it looks too like modern or something. I like these right here, like the classic Defenders. Like these look pretty cool. They're probably like crap for gas mileage, but I mean, you're not buying a big like multi-ton vehicle like this if you're worried about gas mileage.
Yeah, I don't think so. But in this economy, man, you might want to consider it even if you have the money because it's pretty expensive. But these things look really cool. I like the extended like cab versions, not these shorter ones. The shorter ones are cool, like this one, but I like these that are a little bit longer. I think they just look better. But I like them. I think they're really neat. I like this design. It has a really rugged look to it. It's very nice. I mean, look at that. That's so cool. Like that.
It is. Honestly, that's pretty cool for an off-road thing. Also, by the way, speaking of like the Amira, have you seen a BMW 1M? It's a discontinued car. They don't make it anymore, but punch that in real quick. BMW 1M. It's like the shoebox BMW. There it is right there.
What the hell?
These things are like the proportions on this were wild. That there was a guy that used to live back in our hometown of Wetumpka that had one of these, and I'd go riding around on my motorcycle. So occasionally I would see this guy pull up, and the dude was always trying to race. And I don't know, I may or may not have, maybe like on a closed course sometime, possibly. But the dude had like he had put like a tune on it. He had like a huge turbo on the thing, like a blow off valve for the turbo. It sounded insane. Like when this dude took off, like you could hear like the wind and the air coming out of the engine bay and stuff like that. It was wild. It was fast as hell too. You could literally burn the rubber off the tires like taking off from a red light. But these are pretty cool right here. They don't make them anymore. I think the last year model was a 2011 for these right here. But these are pretty sick. It had a full-size 6-cylinder in it for a little bitty shoebox thing like that.
Man, these things look like the equivalent of like a 40-foot high cube box car, like the wacky like dimensions. Like this thing is actually kind of odd looking, really, from the side.
I used to want one of these things really badly. Like back in the day, I used to want one. And I was like, that's a pretty cool looking thing. I like those little small ones right there. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, they're pretty neat. I mean, I don't know though. From the side though, they look a little bit odd. Like that's almost like a perfect circle, like a semicircle on top of the thing. It kind of looks a little cartoonish because of that, at least to me. But still, it's really interesting looking. I will give it that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And also a huge thanks to you once again for support. You Redneck and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat here goes to none other than Darren Quinn. And thank you very much, Darren, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And Darren said, I'm spending winter here on lower southern York's Peninsula making bee boxes, lids and frames with my grandpa's carpentry saw. He had 1,000 beehives. And a beehive can, during honey season, be 3 to even 5 boxes high and 10 frames wide.
You know, I've seen a lot of those bee boxes, especially around here in Utah. Beekeeping is a big thing. I don't know if it's because the state is the beehive state, which actually has nothing to do with the bees, interestingly enough. But there are a load of people who do beekeeping around here, and there's a lot of like honey and bee related stores in Utah. I'm not sure, once again, if it's because the beehive state thing made that into a deal, or if that was just the thing beforehand. If y'all are wondering why in the world the beehive state motto has nothing to do with the bees, the reason why is because back in the day when the Mormons were basically the only people who lived in the state, they always lived in very close-knit communities, the polygamy, and so for that reason, they always would say that the communities were as close as a beehive, and that's where the state got the nickname the beehive state, is because of that, not because of the bees. So I don't know if it's just that people who've moved into Utah recently are like, the beehive state, I'll open up a honey and bee store, and then they made that happen, or if the beekeeping thing was a big deal. But that's really cool, actually, really neat to hear, and I hope that that's a fun thing to do. I bet it is, because I always found beekeeping to be so interesting. As a thing to do, keeping the bees, trying to keep them healthy, harvesting the honey and sometimes the combs. I think you have to harvest the combs to get the honey, if I'm not mistaken, but it's all very fascinating to me, and so that's really cool, and I thank you so much for sharing that with us, Darren Quinn, and I hope you've been having a blast doing that. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another $50 support from Darren Quinn, and a huge shout to you, Darren, for the second very generous support of the night. He said, so unfortunately, you made some snake friends on the trails the other day. Can you tell us the breed of those snakes? And also, love your friendly critter stories. And where's Mr. and Mrs. Corgi and Enforcer Matt?
And a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support, Darren Quinn. And I did make some snake friends. When I was walking on the trail, I saw a rattlesnake, and I went, oh, no way. Let me go grab that thing by the tail the way they tell you not to grab it. So I went over there to it, and I said, hello, you little nipper. And I grabbed it by the tail and picked it up, and it bit me on the arm. And I said, ow, you damn bastard, you bit me. I threw it back down onto the ground, and then I kicked it a little. Well, all jokes aside, most of them were garter snakes. One of them I couldn't really tell what it was because it was too far in the weeds, so I just kind of saw its body, and it was a bigger one, but I didn't know what exactly it was. It could have been anything. Might have been a rattlesnake, but two of them were just like big garter snakes, basically. So that's really kind of the answer that I got. And as far as Mr. Corgi and Sheba, they're back in Bama. They unfortunately had to stay behind because sadly we really can't take care of them because of our schedule and how much we work and everything. So humongous thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
That video was insane, by the way, of RFK picking those snakes
Yeah,
up
I
and they were
know.
biting the hell out of them. Like, that was insane. Like, I don't even know what got into that guy's head to do something like that. It's like, also, by the way, the snake was the black eraser snake. They're generally pretty aggressive, actually. Like, they're very fast. That's how they get the name racer. But the things are not venomous. Like, they're not a venomous snake. But I mean, snakes, just because they're not venomous doesn't mean they're not dangerous. If they bite you, like, they're gonna obviously, draw blood probably. And those snakes have bad bacteria in their mouth, so you can get an infection, like a pretty bad one, from getting bit by those. And he just took like I don't know how many bites he took. The snakes were sitting there biting him the whole time he was holding them by the tail. So I don't know, that dude's like out of his mind or something like that. I don't know what's up with him, but
I'm not gonna lie, you gotta be pretty damn stupid to pick a snake up by the tail, because literally anybody from the south would know that if you ever grab a snake, which is generally a stupid idea, you need to try and get to where it really can't see you and then throw your hand down onto its neck right behind the head, so that way it can't just sit there and bite you. Like, that guy literally picked up the snakes like he was a 4-year-old kid that's drooling from the mouth and was literally just getting bit the whole time. I'm not gonna lie, folks. Like, if I had any respect for that guy, it plummeted, because you've got to be damn stupid to pick a snake up like that. Literally nobody picks snakes up like that. I've never even picked up a snake like that, and I would know not to pick up a snake like that, because you're literally told how to handle a snake in the South because they're so common. Like, if you grow up anywhere on the East Coast, for that matter, where there's millions of snakes, it's like one of the things that they teach you in elementary school is don't pick them up by their tails. You'll get bit a whole bunch, and they will bite you. So grab them by the head and make sure that they really can't see your hand, and be quick with it, or they'll probably pop you while you're trying to grab them by the head. Generally don't go around grabbing snakes, by the way, folks. That's just a bad
don't take
idea.
any snake. It's like don't leave the wildlife alone. And it's like also if you need to get them out of there, just like shoo them off with like a shovel or something like that. Don't pick them up and then start letting them bite your hand.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, folks, I don't know what it is with that dude in particular, but there's some like I'd have to say certainly not belonging in a government position because there's clearly something not mentally right with this person in any way. Like I think like, I don't even, that's not a political statement. I mean, clearly doing something that dumb. I mean, like it's like if someone is that dumb, they really can't hold a government position, you know, because you got to bring everything else into question at that point if they don't even know how to grab a snake or to not mess with a snake, you know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Mr. Light Rail, and thank you very much as well, Mr. Light Rail, for that support. He said, why isn't Russia loaded conventional warheads on the IRBMs they have been using on Ukraine? And is it because there are no conventional warheads for it, and it seems like the kinetic attacks is a waste of an expensive missile?
That's actually you pretty much hit it down on the nail. There are actually no conventional warheads that we know of at the moment that are actually designed to be fit into the independent reentry vehicles to be usable. Generally, you have to design the warheads that go into the MIRVs in a very specific way because most MIRVs are cone shaped in specific dimensions. So you really can't just take anything and throw it in there because it would require a significant amount of modifications to make that usable. So they just have to take the nuclear warheads out of the MIRV and then just use it as a kinetic weapon. So that's generally why we don't see conventional warheads being used, and that's also why we'll probably never see conventional warheads used, unless somehow they're throwing money at something in the background to try and figure out how to make that possible, but generally they're probably not. So I hope that does address that well, and a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Mr. Light Rail for a second support. And thank you very much as well for the second support of the night. And he said, have you two ever considered getting a real studio where you're sitting together and talking and it beats looking at a map for hours? LOL. You know, the only problem with that is we work so late at night. Like, for example, like tonight, we'll probably get off the air, I would imagine, it probably like just short of 11:30 in our time zone. That's a weird time of night to have to drive back from a studio back to the house. Like that would be a strange thing to do. And also, we got to factor in transit time to get there every single day. So it adds a huge element of complexity to the whole thing. So that's generally why. And also, by the way, I'm not sure what real estate's costing these days for something like that, but for a commercial space for something like that, that could wipe us out monthly for everything that we make, possibly. So I'm not sure if that would work. So yeah, a home studio is the way to go for stuff like this. Like it's pretty much the only way to make it work for the most part, because we don't have like huge corporate mega donors. Y'all in the audience are the donors, and y'all get to control, like for example, what we're saying in the question segment and stuff like that, and we don't have to sit here and read ads and stuff like that instead. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, I would have to second that. Like I think we'd probably be running in the red every single month if we did get an actual studio. And also then we'd have to pay to outfit the whole studio and then set up cameras. And then you might have to have a whole thing going on in the background at that point, pre-show prep, to make sure that we look good for the cameras. I'm not saying that we look like hideous or anything, but I haven't had a haircut in a while. And I'd have to be constantly getting haircuts, making sure that we are wearing like well pressed clothes and all that. That takes time. Like right now, for people who are wondering, I'm wearing like a white dress t-shirt that you would wear with a suit and shorts, khaki shorts. That's like my uniform for the show every day. And that's because, like, just to explain, because that sounds weird to wear that in the middle of a show, but that's because over the years I found out that when my computers run shows, and because I have to keep the door closed for sound insulation purposes, the room I'm in gets incredibly hot. Matthew can tell you because he's walked into the room after a show, and it's like an actual heater is heating up the whole room.
Those PCs are power hungry as hell. Like it's so inefficient.
Yeah, so it gets pretty hot in here, so I can't really wear anything normal, or I'm gonna be sweating like a hog in summer heat. Although hogs don't sweat, by the way. Like if I was in here in a polo and everything like I normally wear. So I have to kind of like strip down to like light clothes to be able to not sweat the whole stream. So that way it doesn't get too hot in here. So generally I'm more of a big fan of that, and also on top of that, if we do have to make a living off of this, and getting a studio and running a studio would pretty much wipe out any income that we actually make to live off of, to pay the bills and keep the lights on, and then we'd be in a huge struggle at that point to keep the show running and it really wouldn't add much to the show. If anything, it'd probably take a lot away, because then we would have to be like many other people where we're really trying to market our face more so than we're trying to market the content, which is the news. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I just saw someone say, Enforcer hot tub stream? Hell no, what the hell do you think this is? Damn Andrew Tate? You think we're going to be saying some stupid stuff? No.
We're going to be opening up a new thing, a new concept called Only Enforcer. That's what we're going to be opening up next. Man, he's hit hard times. He's on Only Enforcer. He's hit a tough time in his life. Oh man, he's desperate. He's fallen off. He's fallen off. Also, LMC Wheels Nafo said, damn, what kind of PCs do y'all run? Gaming PCs? Enforcer's running a gaming PC. He's running a pretty big one. It's like the huge, like, you know, mega one that has to like sit on the side of the desk. I'm just running everything off of my really ramped up, like high-spec MacBook Pro. That's what I run everything off of, and it runs my entire desk setup for the most part. I just use it in its docked mode, and then I take it with me when I need to do work outside of the house. So that's what I run all my stuff on. My stuff doesn't get hot. The fans don't even run on it. So mine's completely silent, no heat, no nothing. But that monster over there that he's got, that thing's like constantly making heat.
I gotta tell you, folks, I mean, this thing is like, it's a machine. Like, this thing is a machine. I need to take a picture of it one day because it's unreal. The last computer that I had, because I actually ran the whole first few years of the show off of my earlier computer, which is a little bit smaller. Well, actually a good bit smaller than this one. Once that one started to kind of like crap out, I was like, you know, I really need something that isn't really like pushing the limits to run a stream every single night. So I got a souped up supercomputer basically to run the show on, because that's one expense that makes a great deal of sense because we run this thing every day. So it's humongous, and it also produces loads of heat when it's running a live stream. So I hope that does answer all of the questions tech-wise that everyone has at the moment. I don't know the exact specs of the thing, but it's pretty souped up.
The specs, the crazy part is Andrew has that massive like mini data center sitting over there on the side of his desk that runs his whole setup, and my MacBook outperforms the compute power of that entire PC with all the heat and all the power it's sucking up from the wall. My MacBook literally outdoes that on battery power, which is insane, by the way. This is how efficient those new chips are in the MacBooks. I know people hate on the Mac because it doesn't run games that well. That's really not what MacBooks are for anyway. They don't have like dedicated graphics cards like for gaming and stuff like that, because they're mainly for like productivity and work. So that's all I use mine for. If I want a game, I go on the Xbox. I don't even really do that anymore for the most part. I love my MacBook. I know people love to hate on Apple because they say it's overpriced. I will say it was costly, but you know, if it's for running the stream, like I could justify that for that reason. But I like it a lot.
What's the point of having all that processing power if you can't play a game? I mean, like, you can only run an Excel spreadsheet so efficiently before it becomes redundant to have that kind of processing power. Like, my PC might be a power guzzler, but it can literally do anything that I needed to on one platform. That's way more efficient than having to have a Mac for everything and then an Xbox for gaming. Like, that seemed like, that's like diversifying your supply chain. It needs to be streamlined, man. One system for everything.
Yeah, but everything I use the Mac for, like for example, I'm running like, you know, Discord, like 6 or 7 different tabs, and over there on the left, I got, you know, some other stuff open on a different tab. I have a lot of stuff open at once, so I use a whole bunch of RAM for that, so the Mac handles all that stuff. The only thing the Mac is not good at is simply the gaming and graphics aspect of it, but it's really good for editing. Like, editing on the thing's fantastic. In fact, I would rather edit on a Mac any day of the week than a Windows, like by far, just because I like to use Final Cut to edit everything. So I don't know. To me, it's good, and also the portability of it. You can't beat that. I can literally put it in my backpack, and it's my entire studio. Like, all I have to do is put my mic in the backpack, the laptop, and that's my entire setup, and that's all I have to have. It fits in like a school book bag.
Also, by the way, I saw some people saying, wow, like Enforcer's computer has to guzzle a great deal of energy for it to heat up a room like that. And y'all are absolutely right. I actually have a picture from my basement of the guys who keep the computer running down in the boiler room. They keep the steam running to get the power to the computer so that this thing can run. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to run this PC. Like, I will say that. But I can play Running Train on my computer. Can Matthew do that on his Mac? No. And that's why PC is better. Love the PC.
Well, people are all about the grind, man. They're all about the grind. They don't have time for games.
I'm on that hustle, so let me get improved stats that can't do everything a PC does for the same cost. for no reason. Like, I mean, that doesn't
Man,
make sense.
Apple suckered me good. Apple suckered me good. They had me repeating all the hot phrases, the Apple ecosystem, the build quality, the Retina display. They had me repeating it all, man. I justified the hell out of that before I bought it.
You know, I heard folks that Matthew actually started wearing a turtleneck and going around talking about what everyone needs, which is simplicity. Like I heard that at one point he got into that, but he hopped off of that train a little while ago. But anyways, with that, it is time for us folks to move on and into the next one.
And our next super chat goes to none other than Game Theory. And thank you very much, Game Theory, for that $30 support. We do appreciate that, of course. And they said, why not get AI avatars? I have seen some YouTubers use, but they are live with their voices. I think you're talking about VR chat. I think that's what you're talking about. I've seen those videos where people are like doing interviews in VR chat and stuff like that. Like, especially the ones that stick out to me are the ones that are like talking about like, you know, deployments. There was one that was like the door gunner on like an AC-130 or something like that. One of those combat versions of it.
Inhaling lead. Oh, I see
that one
yeah.
right there. Yeah, they had millions of views on it, but it's like a strange format though. And I think you actually have to use like the goggles like to do that, like because they're moving their hands around and stuff like that. So you know, I'm not ready for the metaverse like for the stream. I'm not ready for that. But Enforcer, let's say you.
Yeah, I'd have to say I don't think I like generally I think that the way we've run the show has done pretty good. Like I think we're pretty dead set in most ways, rather than the news topics we cover of how it's covered, because it's very efficient. Like instead of having to worry about a camera looking at us and what we look like on the camera and a whole bunch of extra stuff, we get down to the subject matter and we just get into the business of it. We get in the trenches on that side of things. And I think generally that's probably why the channel is one of the more successful ones in this category in America, for live streaming, that is because we kind of removed all of the frills that a lot of people put up, like to either self-advertise themselves or things like that, to just focus on the very content that people are really there for, which is the news coverage. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Jeannie, last name Tolls. And thank you very much for that $20 support, by the way. And it said, search Bosnian Camaro.
You ever heard of this one, Matthew?
He explained in the live chat it's like an armored Camaro, but I want to see it right here. It's probably like a Mad Max looking thing.
Oh, dude, it is sick. This is it.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah.
They had a similar thing in GTA 5. It was called the something. I can't remember what the name of it was, but that's what I know everything from. That does look pretty interesting. Who the hell what warlord had this?
This was actually used by the Danish.
Oh, I didn't know the Danish were built like that.
Bro, man, people sleep on like all these like smaller European countries, but they are actually really cool. Like, I think this thing was used for like humanitarian runs or something in the Bosnian peacekeeping missions by the Danish, because they needed something that was fast enough that a sniper couldn't like pop the driver. So they got this thing and just souped the hell out of it, and they would drive at like 120 down like country roads and stuff, so that way the snipers couldn't get them.
This is such a flex too. I mean, they got a tank behind this thing over there in the background, like just sitting there casually, like a big tank. Honestly, I would have a go at this.
Man, honestly, man, it's so cool. I mean, like, it really is neat, honestly. I think this thing is like really, really cool. And so really neat historical reference right there. Jeannie Tolls, for bringing up this Bosnian Camaro. Pretty cool stuff. And a humongous thanks to you for helping the channel to keep it running and having been around for quite some time these days. Quite some time. What is another cool war car that I could think of for all of y'all to take a little look at? There's the Rhodesian Bush War vehicles, but we've kind of done the rabbit hole on that one before. Is there any cool cars that you know of from war, Matthew, that you would want to bring up on air?
There's a couple, but I'm not sure if people are going to like the connotation of the car, though, because, you know, it's kind of associated with a bad individual.
Oh, you mean that armored Mercedes like thing, like the the 3-axle?
Listen, I mean, you can look at the car and you can appreciate the car without having to like the bastard that rode in the car. Like, can we agree on that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I could generally agree. It was a sick-looking vehicle. You know, they still have that thing in a museum. I think it's in America here.
I think it could be possibly. There was a lot of different variations of that Mercedes back in the day. There was also, I think, a couple of Porsches too, but those weren't the mainstream. The Mercedes were the executive vehicles that were used in the government. The only problem is like the all blacked out one, the one that everybody knows about. That one really did look legit evil. Like it looked like an evil villain would be riding in it. So I mean, it looks interesting, but I mean, it does have like an evil connotation. Also, by the way, like I don't think anybody's ever going to be able to get over the fact of who rode in the thing. I think that's always going to stain it.
Let's see, I'm trying to find one of those World War One Rolls Royces because I just saw Butchie 777 bring it up. I do love the Rolls Royce armored cars. I thought those were so cool. Like, I still think they're really cool. They're so neat. I mean, that is literally, folks, a Rolls Royce luxury car armored up for World War One. They were very ineffective, but still really cool. And in the post-war world, they were very, very effective in peacekeeping. But this is what was underneath that armored car.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool looking. Let's see here. Here was one without the turret. I mean, that's insane, man. Imagine rolling up onto the battlefield in a Rolls Royce with a freaking, like, naval machine gun, like a high caliber. That's it's so freaking cool. I mean, really, I can't get over that. Someone said the XM30. Let's go pull that one up just to have a little rabbit hole here. Oh, that's no car. That's an APC. That's a Bradley too. Really cool looking one. At that, but yeah, you know, that's no car.
What's the Middle Eastern country that uses those Mercedes G-Class 6x6 vehicles for their military? Is that Dubai? Well, it's not Dubai. It's not a country, but is it the UAE or who is it that uses those?
Let's see. Pretty sure that it's them. Let's see. 6-axle military truck.
I think it was originally made for the Australians, but I think the Middle Eastern countries adopted it.
Let's see here. I'm trying to get it up here. 3-axle. I'm sorry, I'm getting this messed up. 3-axle. Oh! Geschickt verlegen in die Deutschen.
As a certain silhouette that some of those old Mercedes, you just instantly know what it's associated with.
Oh.
Here's another one.
There's a lot of these, actually. There's, like, many of them. I can't find this 3-axle G-Wagon. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. There it is. Isn't that it?
That's not really it. It's like a legit G-Class. Yeah, that's definitely not it right there. Scroll down a little bit more. Why the hell is it so hard to find it? Let's see. Hold on a second. Australian. Let me see if it's Australian. Yeah, punch that in instead. Australian Mercedes G-Class 6x6, and then you'll see it. He's pulling up the Actros. It's like, that's a semi-truck.
This is it, but that's what they look like in Australian service right here.
Yeah, these things right here. I don't know who in the right mind would get a Mercedes 6x6 for military use. It seems like an absurd thing to do, but it looks pretty cool.
Crocky, mate. like going to go out in the outback. And it's like, man, this is what that guy was talking about. Like, he can't spend another minute on it because there's a man being eaten by a crocodile in the outback, and he need to get into this thing and go save him. Like, that's what he was meaning.
It's just crazy that the G-Class Mercedes went from something that was based on the Unimog chassis, which is a super like hardcore utilitarian like farm vehicle in Europe. It's become a little bit more than that in the modern day, but it's based on that. The G-Class turned from that to turning into the vehicle that every uppity girl wants to have, like for like social points. It's like, how to go from that to this? It's like, that's kind of a bit of a strange change.
That is a really good question, but you know, Matthew, you got to go ask that one Australian politician guy. Don't you think it's kind of inefficient money-wise to, buy G-Wagons for national defense? Oh, don't say that! I punch blokes in the mouth for saying stuff like that. I mean, like, go ask him. I wonder if he had that kind of response.
I don't know, but possibly.
But with that in mind, folks, very interesting rabbit hole here. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have an $11 support from 42 versus 42, and thank you very much as well for that support. They said, thanks for keeping critical thinking and empirical observation alive. The age of enlightenment and the Leaf Spring Army will never die, and neither will my weak username.
Hey, and a big thanks to you for support and the kind words. And I like to think that critical thinking and empirical observation are key tenements of members of the LSA and ourselves, because what is the good of a brain if you never use the brain to think critically, like many people who are in the political world these days do? Like, what is the point of having a brain if you always just pick one side and say that they're right no matter what? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I thank you so much for appreciating that about the channel and supporting it, so we can keep that kind of ideal on YouTube alive, because many people generally go one way or the other, and we stay down the middle, which gets us hated by everybody, but it's better to be hated by everybody than to be loved by half of people and be wrong all the time on everything. So a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Music Uploader, and thank you, good sir, for that $10 support as well. He said, if Jellyfish can go back to the day of picking cabinet members and chose John Bolton as VP, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and National Security Advisor, the LSA would have had higher morale.
Honestly, I think we probably would have. I don't think that would have been wrong. Well, problem is though is that you still wouldn't have listened to that person. It all kind of like getting anybody in the current cabinet. It relies on the current person listening to who they put in their cabinet, and they've made it pretty clear in multiple different occasions they don't listen to them at all, no matter who they are or what they say. If anything, they're there to force them to agree with whatever they want to do off of the bat. So even with John Bolton there, I think the situation would be how it is right now, because I think that question is a good one, and like that point's a good one, but I think a lot of people, including myself, kind of always forget that a lot of the reasons why things are going the way they're going is because the current person in charge doesn't listen to any of their advisors or cabinet members for shit, and they think they know everything when clearly they don't, because literally nobody knows everything, not even us. We can talk about anything and everything to great depth here on the channel, but if you asked me anything about nuclear technology or how to actually design an internal combustion engine or how to repair a car, I'm not going to be an expert on that. So I might not be an expert on automobile laws and policies and whatnot, because I just don't really know a lot about that to know what that would do or how that would affect anything. And I'd be more than happy to say that, because that would be crazy to act like anyone could know everything all the time. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have here a $20 support from Existential Absurdist, and thank you for that 20, by the way. We do appreciate that support right there. That's very generous of you. And then they said, that old limo for a guy with a bad mustache is at Forney's Transportation Museum in Denver, and Google the Old Forney's Museum. And is that really there, just in Denver? Is that really true? Let's see this right here. I've never heard of this museum.
Oh my God, they got a Union Pacific big boy?
Oh, hell no.
Oh, hell yeah.
I was about to light this museum. Oh, what in the world? Like, that's a cutout car.
Wow, look
at
that.
This looks like they got crazy stuff in this museum. They got old stuff.
Wow, look at that thing.
Dang, the dually car.
Man, they got a school bus. This is an old school bus. Isn't this the one that a whole bunch of kids died in? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, man.
Well, there was this whole thing that happened. It was in Nebraska, and a bus just like this one, it got stranded in the middle of a blizzard because they were trying to take the kids back from school, and I think a whole bunch of the kids in that bus froze to death, and then the driver did, and a whole bunch of people did. It was like a local tragedy there. They got a trolley. Wow, that's really cool. Wow, they have a lot of is that? Oh, wow, I don't know what that is actually. What do you know what that is?
It's not a Reliant Robin. It's reversed. I'm not sure what this is.
This is the unreliant swallow or something like that. It's like, I don't know. But man.
Man, it hurts to laugh, man. I feel my head throbbing in the top of my skull. Like every time I laugh, I'm trying to hold it in.
Oh, look. An old Cadillac.
An old caddy. I've never seen a caddy like that. Still had white walls, though.
And then they got the Mutt. That's not a Jeep, by the way, everyone. That's a Mutt. And then we also have another bus. And we have a helicopter. And then we have a Denver and Rio Grande GP30. That's pretty, worn out looking. But that's actually pretty cool that they kept it that way. Let's see here. I don't see this car that you're talking about. Where is this car? Is it here? Oh, what the hell is that?
That's ugly.
Bro, that thing looks like that one Swedish tank, the STRV 103. Like, that's bad. Like, as a car.
I was about to say, oh, hello there, can I sell you a vacuum cleaner?
hello there. It's like, get away from me. And they have an Indian scout. I like that. That's pretty cool. Where is this car? Where is this car that you were telling us about? Where is it? I want to find it. I want to find the car. Where is the car? I'm not seeing the... Is that a... Oh.
Hey, yo. Click on that car that's a picture down.
Oh, that's... Is that Cadillac Eldorado?
That's right. This right here used to have the meanest sons of bitches in town pulling up in this thing. This right here was a gangster's car.
Is it a Cadillac Eldorado?
I don't know the exact name. I'm not like a huge expert on that era of like American gangster car like that, but it's definitely a gangster car. You can tell.
Coupe de Ville, maybe. That might be it. Let's see. Damn, I can't find this car. I'm not doubting you when you said it's here. It's just that I'm not finding pictures of this car. And I'm really trying to find the pictures of this Chicago and Northwestern. Really cool. But I'm trying to find pictures of this car. And I'll be damned, they hiding the pictures real well. Where the hell is this damn car? I think I'm probably just going to have to give up and pull this thing up here in a minute. Let's see here. Yep, I think that's what we're going to have to do because I'm not finding it this way. So let me go type in Hitler's car. I go find it that way. Let's see here. Oh, I found it. Wait a minute. I don't think this is the one that Matthew was talking about.
No, I'm talking about the one with the open top, the one that was used for, the parades and stuff. There it is.
Lordy, there it is.
770K.
This one's in the Auto und Technik Museum. Where is that? This is in Sinsheim, Germany? I thought... Okay, folks.
I thought it was illegal to have that kind of stuff there.
I thought that denazification laws made this stuff illegal. Well, maybe it's because it doesn't have, like, swastikas on it. I think that's how the law applies there. So as long as all that stuff's been removed, it's okay. But that is kind of weird. I thought that the laws in Germany wouldn't allow for this sort of a thing to exist. I would think that they would have had it destroyed. But I will say, though, it is a pretty cool-looking car. But, the connotations, though, kind of destroy any of the coolness that it has from, like, style points. But anyways... With that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And a big thanks to your support and sharing that with us. It's neat to know that one of those cars are there, but it isn't the car that we were looking for. Still, really cool museum. And if I go to Denver someday, which I hope to at some point in the future, I am definitely going to be going to that museum and taking a look at it. Because they had a lot of other cool stuff there that would definitely be worthwhile to take a little gander at. So with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Give Up Now, and thank you, Give Up Now, for that support. They put in 2, actually. We do appreciate that. They said LSA times 4. And also, Secretary of State Temu Kissinger looks sad lately. Temu Kissinger, who's that?
I think that's Rubio.
Oh, dang, he doesn't look anything like Kissinger.
Nah, Kissinger had a certain kind of a look. Like he had a whole vibe going on around him.
I knew how Kissinger was going to sound before he ever opened his mouth, before I ever heard him speak. Like I knew he was going to have that aristocratic accent. Like I just knew it. Oh, it's really just a bothersome thing the way that goes.
Wasn't he German though?
Yeah, a little bit, but he kind of sounded aristocratic.
There's something like there's something about Kissinger. He was interesting guy, I heard that he was in some places that he shouldn't have been. Oh, but we'll leave that for another time. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Miami Catfish. And thank you very much, Miami Catfish.
Hey.
They said, guys, check out this Cold War era German car made from a plastic frame and body. It's called a Trabant. I know that. LSA. Pull up that ugly thing.
Oh my god, the Trabant is awful. I have seen... look at it. It's so ugly.
This is in the same class of Pacer and Gremlin and other ones like that. Trabant's in there with them.
This is the East German Lada. If some of y'all don't know about Soviet or Warsaw Pact car history, the East Germans were trying to make something that could be a car that people could get with the limited resources that they have. They created this thing. The Trabant is quite literally the worst car ever made qualitatively. There's no space in it. The engine does not have literally any power. I think it only has 2 gears. I don't even think it has a reverse gear, if I'm not mistaken. It's horrendous in every imaginable way. Most people, like, literally hardly any Trabants exist in the modern day because people hate them that damn badly. Like, there's nothing nice about them at all. And they also are just hideous looking. That's an AI Trabant. I was about to be like, did someone just, like, pimp out a Trabant? But they did not. Look at how small that is. Like, that is literally a pocket car. When you get out of that car, you can literally crumple it up with your hands and go throw it in the trash can. That's how small this thing is. There's one in Cuba.
Ah, that's where it belongs.
Yeah, it really is. These things are quite horrendous. I would say that they, like, for cooler cars that came out of, like, the Warsaw Pact, generally all of them remain in the Soviet Union, so it'd be like the Ladas, the Gazas, stuff like that. Most of the stuff that was made in other Warsaw Pact countries, like Poland and East Germany, they were pretty horrendous for the most part. Actually, let me go pull up, let's see, Polish, communist Polish cars, let's see, communist Polish cars. Oh my god. No way. So this is what the Polish had.
The Polish had it much better.
This looks like something out of America in the 1940s.
Yeah, I think they might have taken inspiration.
Let's see. Based on the Gaz M20 Pobeda, which is victory. That's what that means in Russian. Let's see here. What else?
Polestar?
Oh wow, actually the Polish kind of had it going on. They had like a rip-off Lada. They had like the whole shebang actually.
Yeah, they kind of did.
And they had this thing.
Ugh.
You know, this looks like something that, like...
Why does it look like sniffing the ground? Like, it looks like a bloodhound.
Bro, this thing's going, they went that away. Bro, this thing
really,
was
man,
used by the Polish secret
to the
police.
ground. It's literally angled at the ground.
Oh, wow, this car company still exists? Oh, no.
Man, what the hell? That looks like a dang Chevy freaking... That looks like a Chevy Cruiser. Like a Chevy... No, that is a Chevy. That's a Chevy Aveo.
Apparently made by them.
Ugh, jeez.
That's rough. So let's see. Yeah, so they produced this thing first. They produced this from 1951 to 1973. So for most of the Cold War, one of the only cars you could buy in Poland is the Warsaw, or the Warsaw, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is this thing. Honestly, that's not too bad. I mean, that's way better than a Trabant. I would say that's probably as good as a Lada. And then they produced this thing for the years after that, not really that long, from 1952 to 1972. And then they also produced the Polski Fiat, which is just the Polish Lada. Because if y'all don't know, the Lada is just a ripoff of a Fiat. They got the license production rights from Fiat to make them, and then that became Lada Legend. But what the... It's actually kind of forward to be made in the 70s in a communist country.
That looks like a Ford, can't place the name, but it looks like that old British, like, estate car that they used to drive around in.
Fiesta.
Maybe, possibly. They used to ride around in, like, the industrial areas of Britain, like in Birmingham and stuff like that. They would have those.
Oh, bruh. They got took over by the Koreans, bro. They got that damn Daewoo Tico out here, bro. Like, it's bro. Daewoo will build you a car and a rifle. By the way, Daewoo is the company that manufactures all the rifles for the South Korean army. But I have to say,
like a Fiat Panda.
Their car designs are lacking. Like, I'm looking at these really quick, and I'm not really seeing anything. Yeah, these are pretty rough, honestly. Like, who the hell would want one of these? But yeah, they didn't really have a lot of cars they produced, but, you know, a lot better to get a car in Poland in Soviet times than in East Germany like the Trabant. But a big thanks to you for support, and we're on to the next one.
Also, a 5 from Robert Krogan, and thank you, Robert, as well. He said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA, and a little for the tireless work, and grab one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Robert, and we certainly will. And so what do we got from the chat?
And this one goes to AF Kaplan. He said, would Putler go as far as to have Lukashenko removed in order to get Belarus more directly involved in the war?
Probably not, because the situation probably might become unstable. There could be some sort of attempted power grab by underlings in Belarus in that kind of a situation. So I generally doubt it. It's a lot more stable and a lot more secure to keep them in power and kind of let them have a little bit of autonomy. If things look too dangerous, than trying to overthrow them, because who knows how that could actually turn out in the end. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also 42 versus 42 said, check out the Le Car. Le Car is le ugly. That's an ugly looking thing right there. I must admit, I just looked it up. It's hideous. But our next one here goes to,
Oh no, go ahead.
Our next one here goes to C146, who puts in a 5. He said, it was actually an MBT with Buran rockets strapped to it.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to look into that after the show. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Hesterix, who said, LLC in question, when will the ruble become the rebel? Ha! It already is.
Matthew's right. It pretty much kind of is, really, you know? It's not a good thing. Yes, not good at all. But a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Kami. And thanks for the support. They said, correction, they don't suck. The Russians just suck using it. Ukraine grinded Russia to a halt in the air with S-300s, LOL.
I would actually say that they suck, because we've seen a lot of people try and use them, and nobody can use them. Like, the Iranians can't, the Venezuelans can't, and the Russians can't. And really, like, even, like, I believe India has some of them. They really couldn't use them either. I generally think they just suck. Either all of these countries suck, which isn't really out of the equation entirely, or the system sucks. And I'm generally thinking that it might be a combination of both in the end. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Sascott Hebert, and thank you very much, Sascott, for that support. He said, I said something street here in Sevastopol is the Air Force headquarters if you want to geolocate.
Oh, well, I thank you for the support, but I'll have to take your word on that. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Squamous Tarkus, as well as a 5 from Bradley Barrows. And thank you both, Squamous and Bradley, for that support, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from DWRB, who said, is there anything the UN or other governing body can do to either hold Iran or the United States for violating the not ceasefire?
No, because the UN really doesn't have any, like, binding power that can force anyone to have any consequences, and also both of those countries, well, not Iran, but the United States has a veto power, a permanent one in the United Nations, so we can just veto anything that's done against us, and it can't be done any longer, because one veto stops the whole process. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $2 support from Zalagar, who said, look up the Chevy SSR. And that's one of the ugliest cars of all time, that thing right there. I can't stand that. It looks hideous. It looks like a PT Cruiser.
Oh my God, that thing is terrible.
That's very bad. It's ugly. Also, you know what a PT Cruiser looks like. Those things are bad ugly.
Yeah, I've seen a PT Cruiser. Dude, what the hell what were they smoking to come up with this? When did this... Oh... Well, no wonder it had such a short production run. This thing is awful. And apparently it's supposed to be calling back to this? This looks way better than that.
Oh.
Man, like, this thing be coming around going, I'm what your granddad used to get around town. This thing becoming I'm what your future generations are going to use. Everyone's like, get the hell out of here. Get out of here, man. Honestly, this is terrible. How many did they sell?
Not enough to make it worth it.
Oh my God, this thing looks like, honestly, this looks like some sort of a car they make for, like, the Teletubby show. Like, this looks like what a Teletubby would drive around.
I thought you were about to say it was a car they made for the Taliban.
No, the Taliban wouldn't be caught dead in one of these. Like, they got more style than this. Like, this is a Teletubby car or something. Why is everything rounded? Like, even the door handle's like a semicircle. This thing is cartoonish.
Man. This was back when that was in style, like rounding off corners and stuff like that. Sharp edges were not in style. They used to have like the Fox body Mustangs and stuff like that were pretty rounded off and stuff like this too. Yeah, that was in style back in the day.
Bruh, man, this thing came out right after the war on terror started. Man, I don't know why in the hell they didn't go to the Chevy factory and shut it down, because this thing is a piece of terror, without doubt. Like, you see this thing rolling down the street, I think I'd have a heart attack and die on the spot from how ugly this thing is. This is terrible. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one. But a big thanks to your support.
You know what's crazy about that Chevrolet is they were one letter away from being the USSR. It was literally the SSR. They just took the U out of it.
Bro,
I don't think a commie would be seeing that car.
Bro, they weren't, like, that thing was so ugly, they weren't United Soviet Socialist Republics, they were just Soviet Socialist Republic. Bro, like, it's like, man, damn, real downgrade. Bro, that was like the most inserted laugh you could have ever done. Man,
I'm trying not to hurt my head, man. My head is just aching right now. I'm trying not to laugh every time I do that. I feel like my head's going to explode.
I'm
laughing at that basketball player that goes,
Man, what's that one? I can't think of that one guy, but he kind of laughs like that. You know, he goes,
Alawi something, his name is.
Maybe? I'm not really sure, but honestly, though, it was pretty funny. Like, I'll have to admit. But with that, we actually have one more super chat to get to here. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 3. And thank you, Plazoth. They said, LOT, LSA, and thanks for the coverage.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and thank you for helping to support this coverage and making it possible. If it wasn't for folks like y'all, this whole thing wouldn't have been possible. We wouldn't have been able to keep it running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again for your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to get to our Morse code decoders and then get on into our live chats. And someone just said, damn, you guys are corny. Well, it's better than being, you know, like, stupid. Like, you know, I was like, better than being that. Though we try and keep it interesting for you here. I hope you appreciate going back to your boring mockumentaries or whatever the hell you watch. I don't know. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to
How am I going to get called corny by a guy called Frankie? Come on, Frankie. Come on, man. Have a sense of humor. What do you not laugh from time to time? What are you, stuck up or something? I mean, come on, man. Come on, Frankie.
Man, people be saying we corny. It's like, well, hell, at least we ain't flat and have no personality. It's like, you know, it's like, could be worse, you know, like there's always something a little bit further down and a little bit further up. But, you know, like, it's interesting to me, folks. I don't mean to say this to, like, you know, like, style, but it's like, you know, if that guy tried to run a show, probably wouldn't make it that far. You know, it's like I don't think people get how hard it is to keep people interested and engaged in stuff. It's not easy. And people always like to criticize, but it's like, if you were in our shoes, how well, you know, would that guy do? I would assume probably not that well, because he doesn't run a show. So, with that, we are on to the next one.
He's running a show, but it's not a show you'd want to see. He's running the clown show. Jumping into our Morse code. Jumping into our Morse code decoders. Oh, my head. This first one here, I'm sorry for complaining, folks. I'm not meaning to complain, but my head is like really hurting bad right now. I got to get some aspirin or some Advil or something in a minute. But the Morse code decoders tonight were Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Her Royal Fluffness, Kush, Cupby, Sire, and Brian. They said the Morse code says Russia's out there getting all this wonderful juice, and they ain't getting stronger. LLT, LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. Y'all got that done on the nail? That's the Morse code message of the night. I gotta say, it's a humongous and incredible thing to know that the Lee Springer Arsenal Corps gets that correct time and time again. Truly an amazing and profound and incredible thing to see. And I hope that we continue to see the Lee Springer Signal Corps continue to persevere and do well with those Morse code decodings. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to get on and into the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to none other than Bob, who said, what happens after Russia collapses?
That's the great question. We don't know. Generally, those sorts of times are very unpredictable. We can guarantee a couple of things. They'll probably go into a great financial depression like they did at the fall of the Soviet Union. They probably will have a very turbulent time governmentally in securing some new form of a government. Those things that we can say with some certainty. Everything else would generally be up in the air, and we wouldn't really know exactly how it would go. We just kind of have to play it as it happens. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we were on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Justin, who said, what do you think living underground for so long does to a man like Putin?
Probably nothing. I have a feeling like people like that are like either sociopaths or psychopaths, and they really don't process emotions normally. So I generally think these are not really phased much. What do you think, Matthew?
I think it's a very ugly sight. I think it's a lot of debauchery going on. That's why I think I've heard stories and stuff that I'm not sure are true or not, but I've heard some stories that there's probably a lot of debauchery going on behind the scenes, like, you know, not great stuff, just on a personal level, going on with that.
What
But
do you
not to
mean?
mention about well, I mean, possibly, maybe mistresses, maybe things like
Oh, bro, we
this, you
all
know,
know
come and
about that.
go.
That's been going on
Uh,
forever.
yeah, I mean, this dude's not an upstanding guy. Let's just put it that way. Like, just on a personal level, outside of all the nasty war crimes and stuff like that's going on that Russia's perpetrating, he's not a nice guy. Like, he doesn't really have any like anything going on like for him. But yeah, he's not great. He's kind of like the devil reincarnate in skin. But I would say living underground like that, I would say generally like I would agree with the enforcer. With somebody like that, they were already a bastard. So they could live above ground, underground, wherever they're at. They're still going to be a bastard.
Yeah, because a guy like that, like he's clearly not processing emotions like all of us do normally, where you get happy, sad, cry. That guy is clearly a sociopath of some sort. So he doesn't have any emotions for anyone else. Nothing really phases him all too much. He doesn't really operate on the kind of emotional plane that we do. So I'm sure he's probably not affected at all. He just considers it to be the most logical approach to take for his own benefit, regardless of how it affects anything else. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is I Am Commander, who said, do you think Putin would be dumb enough to launch a nuke on Kyiv with the latest attacks from Ukraine? It seems like they're losing bad and getting desperate.
I would say probably not, because they probably know that the consequences of that, which are unmeasurable at this point, would probably be worse than the gain they would get from using a nuclear weapon. So I'm generally still of the mindset that a use of a nuclear weapon is still largely out of the picture right now. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that in mind, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be able to keep the stream running with each and every single one of y'all here. We had a peak viewership tonight of nearly 17,000 people, and 107,000 people have watched the stream before it ended. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching. We're always incredibly honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all being here and enjoying the stream, and I hope that we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is enough news to make a short war video tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Granny, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow on the next nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, maybe on a short war video midday tomorrow if there is enough news to cover. And also, thank you all for once again joining us tonight. We had over 107,000 people that joined us by the end of the stream tonight. Excuse me, by the way. Had to do a little... That sounded so weak. So weak. It sounded pitiful. Take his man card away. That cough right there, that just did him in. But anyways, though, we'll see you all tomorrow on that note. And of course, hopefully with one less headache to speak about. But we'll see you all then. And of course, Slava Ukraine. Hear 'em, Slava. Get some rest and good night.